Well, it is fantastic to see all of you here at our first Marin County Children's Summit of 2024. We'd like to welcome all of you to this fantastic event. And it is my great honor not only to say good morning, welcome, thank you for coming, and hello, but also to introduce our esteemed member of Congress, Mr. Jared Huffman, who is going to appear with us via video today. So please give him a big round of applause. And I'll see many of you throughout the event. Thank you.
Hi, folks. I'm Congressman Jared Huffman, coming to you from Washington, D.C. to congratulate First Five Marin on your 25th anniversary. This is a major milestone. Thank you for all you do for Marin's children and families. You're making a difference. You're making Marin a better place to live, work, and learn. I suspect there are people in the room who have been involved in First Five for decades. Some of you have been here for all 25 years working to support children and families. I want to thank you for your incredible efforts and goodwill. And to those of you who are newer to the scene, thank you for joining the team. I hope you are here for the long run. First Five Marin has achieved so much, but there's always more work to do. I have prepared a congressional certificate of recognition to honor this anniversary, and I want to thank all of you again for your important work and wish you the very best for many years to come.
Congratulations. Amy and Dave as well up to the stage. Dave Bonfilio and Amy, right?
Maria, get a microphone.
Oh, I can do that. I just, can you hear me? There, great. Well, it's happening. I am 7 months into my position, and I am proud. I am proud to stand on the shoulders of giants, and I am grateful for these two right here. Amy Reich dedicated 20 years of her life to this work. Those programs that we value and love so much are her legacy as well. And so I just want to make sure that she also holds this. And none of this, even in the state of California, would be possible without our local hero, our commission hero, our Commissioner Emeritus, Dave Bonfilio. He worked tirelessly in 1998 with the American Cancer Society and Rob Reiner to make sure that dollars were coming in for young children and their families of California. Your legacy will last for generations. Thank you. Itoko is still here. Itoko is our commission chair, and he'll be doing some introductions.
Thank you, thank you. Let's give them a big round of applause again. And I would be remiss if I did not also extend a special gratitude to Amy Reich for multiple reasons, but I don't think I would be on this commission without her encouragement to apply, at least. And it's been a wonderful experience, so thank you for encouraging me to do that, and also thank you for making her a great family who I grew up with. So if we could give her another round of applause, I'd appreciate that. Okay, so if you work for First Five Marin, or if you have ever worked for First Five Marin, could you please stand up? Yes, yes, let's look around the room. We thank you. Don't sit down, don't sit down. If you work for our special partners, Help Me Grow Marin, also please stand up. Our staff and the folks that really contribute to the day-to-day operations of First Five are really our unsung and unseen heroes, and like none of this would happen without them. So again, one big round of applause for everyone. Thank you who has been a part of First Five Marin and all your work on behalf of children aged 0 to 5. You may sit down now. Yeah, I guess, I suppose. My fellow commissioners, could you please stand up? And any former commissioners in the room, former commissioners. There's been a few people on this commission. We thank you for your service. There are meetings, there are in-between meetings, there are emails, there are things to do for commissioners as well. Thank you. You actually get to see our faces monthly though, so thank you for the reminder, Michelle. And Michelle also deserves a special round of applause because none of these events happen without her, really, honestly, ever. So thank you, Michelle. So we are here for this Marin County Children's Summit to ask the question, to ask the ancient African proverb, and how are the children, but if you know the answer, don't respond just yet. We actually really want to hear some honest answers about how the children are. For those of you that have been involved in early childhood education or K-12 education or been parents or just work with kids in general, I think it is really important to acknowledge that this generation of children post-pandemic is showing up and bringing and coming to our homes and our communities and our society in ways that we've really never seen before. For those of us that have been doing this for a long time, there is a really special need out here in the world for new and innovative thinking, new approaches, and new designs. What has worked for a long time is showing a lot of symptoms of stress and dysfunction. And so thank you for all of you being here today to kind of reimagine and wonder and think and bring your energy towards what a better system could be. What a system could be that provides for all of the children in this county, regardless of their physical or social emotional needs, regardless of their family backgrounds or their language acquisition status or their immigration status. This is, if not the wealthiest, the top 2 or 3 wealthiest counties in the United States of America. We have to figure this out for our children. So thank you for being here. Thank you for celebrating our 25th anniversary. For those of you that don't know the whole history and why we're advertising like a new RFP process and what's happening with First Five, we are funded almost entirely by money that comes from Prop 10, which was approved in 1998. And that was our tobacco tax. And if anybody's left in the room that's still smoking or buying tobacco, you'll see the effects of that tax anytime you check out at the cash register. Thankfully, it's one of those kind of big government tax programs that seems to have worked. Californians don't really smoke too much anymore. Yay! That's good news. But as a result, the First Five funding is really taking a major hit because there's not as much tobacco tax revenue coming in. And so much like many of you that work with different public organizations and agencies, we are having to figure out how to realign and readjust our budget and still do great things for children and families 0 to 5 in our county, but with less money. You know, that's a big deal. That's why the 25th anniversary is important. Yay for health outcomes, yay for early childhood development, and we have to figure out some different ways to get things done here in our county and as a commission. And so we are an independent government agency, and as a result, you know, we strive to be responsive to community needs and target our community investments. We are making a new commitment with our funding. You'll hear more about that during lunch from our amazing executive director, Maria. Please give her a big round of applause. Maria, come on up, take this mic from me. Need anything else? You good?
No.
Water?
I think I'm okay. Thank you. Thank you, Toko, for always getting the energy up in the room. Thank you so much to everyone for being here today. Before we begin, I get to do the fun part, which is honoring our champions for children. But before we begin, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that in this room today, there is grief, there is anger, there's frustration, and there's deep hurt. I'd also be remiss if I didn't say, this is a room filled with possibility, a room filled with hope. And I hope that today, as we gather together to celebrate champions, some who are here, some who are not, that we can dig deep into that hope and possibility so that we can work together to make the change that our children and families need in this county. With that, I'd like to take a moment of silence for our beloved champion for children, Olivia Beltran. All right, let's get this celebrating. Let's get to the joy. Let's get to the community building that this is all about. My name is Maria Patricia Nigel. I am the executive director of First 5 Marin. I am a proud, proud executive director. I stand on the shoulders of giants. Some of you who are out here, I see leads on projects that we are beloved in our community, and I am just grateful to be able to represent First 5 Marin. Today we celebrate 25 years of this incredible work, as Itoko mentioned. There are so many people in Marin County doing tremendous work for children and families. Some get to stand on a podium like me, and others do this work with dedication and heart, day in, day out, with very little acknowledgement. Therefore, I'd like to have our commissioners come on stage, our current commissioners and those who are representing our commissioners, to come on stage with me, because we're gonna honor those folks today, those who lead our programs, our projects, provide exemplary service, and advocate for a better future for our children. So if the First 5 commissioners and those who are representing them today can come on stage. Yeah, you can stand in front of me. Stand on the other side. Oh my God. So if I can first have, and I'm gonna pull this back so there's room, and try not to fall off the back of the stage. I could already see that. Yeah, I'm gonna try not to do that. If I could have Bree Marchman.
Do you want to grab the wireless?
Yeah. Bree Marchman. You're supposed to be presenting. Are you there? Yes. Reed Marchman, can you share with us, I mean, we all have 2 minutes. You know how long these things can go. So 2 minutes
I'll be very efficient.
on your champion for children.
Yes, so I am very, very honored to get to recognize Carol Eilenberg, our first 5 champion for children. Carol has been a foster parent, what we now call a resource parent, for 26 years. That's a big deal, people, 26 years. And during that time, she has had over 70 placements come in her home, and Carol has dedicated her career to caring for our little ones, mostly babies, a lot of toddlers. So she really has honored that first 5, how do we take care of our youngest children and make sure that they have a healthy start on their way to healing. And Carol has had quite a few accomplishments. She actually was one of the founding members of the original Foster Parent Association, our original community resource center, providing all kinds of supplies to families, started in her garage, and she has done countless placements in the middle of the night over the years, and we just want to thank her for all the amazing things that she's done. So come on up, Carol. Absolutely deserve it. Thank you. All right, who's next?
All right, who's next? All right, could I have Angie Evans to the microphone?
All right,
If you could
Angie,
pass
Angie.
the microphone to Angie. Thank you.
Good morning. I am proud and honored to honor this person this morning. She's been an advocate for early childhood for over half of her life. She has had her own home daycare. She's also, she adopted a child and has raised 3 kids, all now who are in college. As a grandchild on his way to the NFL. Just had to say that. She has worked tirelessly as an advocate for children in Marin City. So I really want to honor the work that she has done. She is now presently a site director at Horizon Community School, who has only been in existence for 7 years. So you can imagine what she's done. She's worked for CAM. Like I said, she's had her own home daycare. And I am proud to be working with her, proud to know her, and truly want to acknowledge and honor her today. Mona Shivers.
Take the microphone.
I am really proud to honor somebody who I've held in high regard and known for quite some time. We actually grew up together. I'm not sure if he made it. He said he was going to come, but he may have had a last minute something come up, but I'm looking for him and I don't see him. But when I say play, you say is the way. Play is the way. Play. So I wanted to take a special time to honor Mr. Paul Austin and his organization, Play Marin. They do just a ton of things for local kids and the community. And, it's really interesting to think about play as an equity tool and a relationship builder. And that is really the way we should probably all be thinking about it. But Paul has created an organization that really is an instrument for change, for equity, and for access and opportunity. And for that, I'm really proud to honor him today. Let's give him a big round of applause. Thank you.
If you could pass the mic to Aideen. Commissioner Kathleen.
Good morning, everybody. At Marin Childcare Council, we're charged with supporting the early childhood education workforce. And to do that, we couldn't do it without exceptional people doing that work. So today I'm honoring Michelle Tyler. Michelle has been with our agency for over 9 years. She has provided hundreds of hours of training, workshops, mentorship, support, resources to our early childhood education community. And that's a huge thing. Often our early childhood education community is overlooked, so it's so important to have exceptional people working for them. I'm in awe of the work you do every day, Michelle, so thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Dr. Lisa Levitt? If you could pass the microphone.
My name is Lisa Levitt. I'm a pediatrician at Marin Community Clinics and a former Marin First 5 Commissioner. It is my great joy to nominate Dr. Karen Schmidt as our champion for children. Karen holds her doctorate in child psychology and she trained at UCSF. She was recruited to Marin Community Clinics 8 years ago to build our integrated pediatric behavioral health program, and she has worked tirelessly to do that. She is an expert in trauma, and she balanced our program to focus much more on prevention through ACEs and Healthy Steps and Triple P. She oversees the training of our next generation of therapists through our Behavioral Health Fellowship program. For those of you who know Karen, you might know that she's not a big fan of public speaking, but whenever I ask her to speak before groups to advocate for youth mental health, she always says yes. Karen goes above and beyond and is the absolute best team player we could ever ask for. Here is a quote from Karen from 6 years ago that really rings true today. She said, "The families are amazing. They will do whatever is necessary to help their children. Even after everything they've been through, they are resilient. It is an honor to work with them. I love working here." Karen, we are so grateful to work with you, and we love you. Congratulations.
Commissioner Eric Lincoln.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. It is my great privilege to recognize our next champion for children, and that's Alicia and Cho Ogier and Jenny Novak, co-chairs for dedication to special education. If you're not familiar with dedication to special education, their mission is to improve the quality of special education in Marin County schools and connecting families for a stronger community. They are tireless advocates, 100% volunteer-led. They're even currently outside of the classroom advocating for a fully inclusive playground in Marin County to serve youth of all ages and all abilities. And one last thing I'll mention about them before Alicia comes up. They're also currently just a couple weeks away from their biggest fundraiser, their benefit car raffle, their 19th annual benefit car raffle. So if you want to win a new car and support a great cause at the same time, check them out. Alicia, come on forward. And I'd like to ask your fellow board members to stand as well who are here. Maggie and Sarah. I know your fellow co-chair Jenny Novak couldn't be here, but congratulations to you both and thank you for your work.
Could next Lisa Rappel, are you? Oh, okay. You're gonna, all right, sounds like a plan. Sandra Rosenblum, would you like to go next?
Susan Martinelli has been an international board-certified lactation consultant since 1989, and she has devoted her career to serving low-income families in Marin at WIC and at Marin Community Clinics. She has shared her expertise and her passion for breastfeeding with thousands of families in this county. Additionally, she has mentored hundreds of professionals, service providers, clinicians, and shared her deep expertise and passion with them. I have been a longtime super fan of Susan's, and I know that there are many people here who have personally or professionally or both benefited from her expertise, her compassion. I'm privileged today to honor her as a champion for children.
Smaller and smaller. Commissioner Kelly.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm Kelly. I'm the CEO of the Bay Area Discovery Museum, and it is my distinct pleasure and honor to give this next champion award to Ramona Little Taylor. Our Deputy Director of County Library Services. Come on up. For those of you that have had the pleasure of working with Ramona, you know that she leads from a place of fierce belief in the power and possibility of the democratization of knowledge and access to learning for everyone, but in particular for young children. She thinks imaginatively and expansively about the way a library can show up in a community to think about how to solve the most pressing issues facing young children. Whether it's the learning bus, bringing preschool learning opportunities to our most remote and vulnerable communities, or providing emergency childcare for healthcare workers during COVID, she represents all the qualities of a true champion. Ramona, thank you for all that you do to make Marin a great place for children so they can grow up and thrive and be happy. Thank you so much.
Dave, it's your turn.
It's my turn. It's crowded up here. I first heard this lady speak 15, 20 years ago when Easter seals came to the commission. Suzanne, you can start walking up here, please. Suzanne helped both the commission and child care workers in the early work of helping them understand what the children were going through and what resources the parents could use. And that has now morphed into Help Me Grow. And I had the pleasure of, when I was the interim executive director, of hearing from Suzanne on a regular basis about some of the clients that she had, about the kids that were really not being served by our county, and the hard work that it was to get them to a place, and their families, to a place where their children can thrive. Doesn't always work, but Suzanne puts her heart and soul in it. So I want to thank Suzanne for being a champion of children.
Mr. Paul Austin, if you could come up here and take the stage, sir. Let's give him a big round of applause. Thanks for being here today, Paul. I'm not going to repeat all the nice things I said about you. You have to watch the video, man. But please give him a big round of applause for being a champion for children. Play, Marin. Play is the way. Thank you.
Stay there.
No problem.
Michelle Fideli.
Good morning, everyone. If you could help out, we have a few people that haven't been able to have a seat yet, so if you have space at your table, could you raise your hand so our guests could join you? Come on in, folks. Thank you. Today, I'm so happy to acknowledge someone that, I knew this was going to happen, who's been doing terrific work for so many years with young children, and very visible in her little group when she does it, but maybe not to the big community. And it's Carrie Bacho from Parent Services Project. Carrie, come on up. Carrie is La Caperucita Roja. She's the Little Red Reading Hood, and is the most incredible storyteller and makes stories active and interactive, and we love her. She's in charge of early literacy and has connected with so many children and so many families, and thank you, Carrie.
All right, I was not going to be left out of this celebration. My champion for children is somebody who's been a comadre in the lucha with me for many years, and way before I ever stepped into West Marin. She has been there for families who were invisible. She has been there for families who needed her every step of the way. And she continues to be there for those families. Her relationships last generations. Could I please have Lourdes Romo up to the stage? If it's about children, and if it's about West Marin, you know who's going to be there, and she'll be in your face. And that is exactly where we love her and want her to continue to be. Thank you, Lourdes Romo, for your dedication and for your commitment to the families of West Marin. We are better for it.
All the presenters in front, and the champions right behind.
The tall ones, the short ones. Short ones, I know. That's where I belong.
All right. I think we're good. Just patience, that's all. All right. Everyone right there, okay? I'm going to take about 3 or 4, all right?
Well, thank you for celebrating with us. We just appreciate these community members that continue to do this with very little reward often, and so we are grateful for all of their work. We are now going to transition into the part of this summit where the work begins. Could I please have Mike Blakely up to the stage? Before we ask the question, how are the children, we have to ask, how are the families? And to set the stage for this conversation, we have Mike Blakely here for a reality check about the extraordinary costs of making ends meet here in Marin. Thank you, Mike.
Good morning. Boy, that's a tough act to follow. Congratulations to everybody, and thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. I was reluctant at first to accept this invitation. First of all, because you're having a celebration today, and I don't know if you've heard before, they call economics the dismal science. And so I was a little concerned about throwing cold water on this celebration, but I'm here. And I'm going to try to share with you some data. Some of it you will already know and will be very familiar to you. And some of it I hope will help to just drill down a little bit in the reality for families here in Marin and what they're facing in terms of costs. You don't need a bunch of data to walk out of this room and say, boy, you know, it's tough to make ends meet. That's the title of this, and we all know that. But I'm hopeful that some of the data that I show you today will be useful for you when you're applying for grants, or to maybe shed some of the data in it, put it in a different light than we're used to seeing other than just some top line number. So let's go ahead and start. So this is some very basic data that you will have seen before. And I want to walk through it. So median household income in Marin, that means that half the household's income is higher than that number, half of it is lower. That's a number that moves around a lot, and some of you will be very familiar because some of your programs are tied to this number in terms of the funding that you get. The average home price, that changes every month. It will surprise nobody to see this figure. This is from December. Believe it or not, here in Marin, we do have homes that sell for $10 million. So one month, this number can look very different than this, but this is the most recent in December. No matter how you slice it, that's a big number. And then another number, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with, Marin County's poverty rate. I want to point out a couple things here. First of all, excuse me, you know, Marin's rate, 7.7%, that compares favorably to the state and the national picture. It's a little worse when you start to look at people under the age of 18. It's a little bit higher, but still significantly better than what we see at the state and federal levels. But here's the trick, and if you can click on the next one, you all know this better than I do. This is data that disaggregates that number into different demographics. And, you know, this is not news to most of you, but here's the situation. If you're the leader of a big foundation, or you're a public official in Sacramento and you're deciding which regions of the state you're going to give money to, you're probably more focused on those top line figures, the median household income, the value of properties, because property taxes play such a critical role in state funding. You're not really always privy to some of the numbers that tell the real story. And in this one, you can see the poverty rate among children in Latin America and children in Marin County. You're talking about 1 out of every 5 Latin American children, right? That is a very different story than this very pleasing median income number of $135,000, or if you're a homeowner, how much your home is worth, right? This is the real number. Next. Then I wanted to drill down a little bit on wages. Again, I'm preaching to the choir here when we're talking about wages, but the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that's a federal agency, tracks hourly wages for thousands of occupations. And so here's just a snapshot of some of the wages here in our metro area. The minimum wage, $16 an hour for the state of California. As most of you know, this year, thanks to legislation for fast food workers in April, it's going to go up to $20 an hour. Now, that's only for if you work for a chain that has 60 or more restaurants nationwide. So we've got a lot of restaurants here in Marin County fast food restaurants that don't have 60 change. So we don't know what's going to happen with those workers' wages. Healthcare is the other one. This year, healthcare workers will see raises for various categories, raises from $21 to $25. So there is some positive movement in terms of wages here in the state of California. The median hourly wage, again, half more, half less for the San Francisco Bay Area is $31.50. But you have to look at that number and compare it to some of the more typical occupations that we have here in Marin County, particularly those of our lower income families, right? So just take a look at this snapshot of wages here. None of these will be too much of a surprise. I frankly was surprised and disappointed at the preschool teacher level, but you're probably looking at me and saying, I'm glad you woke up, Mike. And if you look at the next thing, let's really put this into context. So some of you are familiar with MIT has what they call a living wage calculator. So you can plug in any combination of household, number of parents, number of children, age of those children, and this is an estimate of what it would really take to have just meet your basic needs in that region. And as we can see, if you are a family with 2 working adults here in Marin County with 1 child, you need to have at least each parent making almost $40 an hour, okay? And if you look at the table above, that's not, in those positions, that's not happening. If there's only 1 adult working, because let's say one of the other adult has to stay home with the child because childcare is too expensive, that person needs to be making about $55 an hour, right? And I can tell you from studying this table that those occupations are usually college degrees, sometimes even master's degrees, to command that type of hourly wage. So again, we can look at the prospect of wages going up and we can say, during the pandemic, wages for workers at the lower end went up and this is a great story, but we have to keep it all into perspective of what does it really cost to live here, and this is just one example of that. So rent, of course, is the other story that everybody knows very well, and what I wanted to do here was just share what's happening in Marin compared to other regions in the Bay Area. And as you can see, Marin is, of course, at the top end. Again, I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know. But what's interesting here is a couple things. One is, Sonoma County, which is just a few miles away, is significantly less. And maybe some of you who work in Marin live in Sonoma County for just that reason. We know that exists. But the other thing, and if you can go ahead, is, again, let's put this into real context here, okay? So if you've ever purchased a house or applied to rent an apartment, the landlord or the bank will ask you for your income so they can look at an indicator called a rent-to-income ratio, right? And best practice for that is 30%. Sometimes they do 25%. Sometimes it's more stringent at 40% of your gross income. So 2 things here. First of all, taxes are a lot. Social Security is a lot. Some of you might be trying to put money towards your 401k or saving. So at the end of the day, your net, it doesn't seem fair to take a gross wage number and say, well, it's okay if 30% of your wages go towards your housing, when at the end of the day, it's more like 30% of the 50% that you get after everything else is taken out. But nonetheless, that's how we do it and how we measure it. And so if you want to take a 2-bedroom apartment here in Marin County at a price of, as you can see as in January, about $3,700, the gross income of that household needs to be $150,000, more or less. And as I just showed you from the wages and occupations, and as we all know, there's only a certain proportion of our population whose households are making that much money. So, sometimes we just hear rent is expensive, but we don't always understand why it's expensive or how it factors to be so expensive, and this maybe should shed a little light on that. And so I want to just end with the next slide. The University of Washington has something called the self-sufficiency standard. This is a very valuable data point for some of you when you're doing grant applications in particular. Again, it breaks down an estimate of costs for households. And as you can see here at the top line, based on this indicator, a household with 2 adults, 2 children, 1 preschool and 1 school age, in order to meet basic needs, this calculator estimates you need to be at that about $160,000 a year. So again, that's hard to do. Even with 2 working adults, we know that. But here it is in black and white. This is what it takes to make it here. And so when you ask the question, how are the children, if you're a child in an affluent household in Marin County, life is probably pretty good. But if you find yourselves on the underwater of these types of figures that I've shown here, it's a struggle. And again, I'm giving you all this data so that you can use it. Our organization trades in the currency of data. We try to focus as much on socioeconomic as we can. I always like to say that economies are not about businesses. They're about people and quality of life. And these are the indicators that often get left out of decision makers when they're deciding who are we going to give money to, what regions are we going to support. We need to stand up and say Marin County is, it's not all that it seems. And here's the data that shows it. So with that, thank you very much and enjoy your event.
Okay, if you want to go up. Okay. Does anyone we have time for 2 questions. Would anyone like to? It's hard, I know, but look around. Would anyone like to ask Mike a question? Something they have.
Oh, okay.
Anyone? Feel brave enough? All right, Farrell. I knew I could count on you.
Good afternoon. So that was great data points. We all write grants to bring more funding to Marin County. I'm here on behalf of North Marin Community Services. What do you project over the next year, and what should we be thinking about in terms of basically funding for nonprofits? How can we best leverage public dollars? Any changes locally in the economy that we could be thinking about and trying to lift up in our grant proposals?
Simple questions. I thought we only had time for 2. Well, what I can say, and some of you have seen the headlines, what we notice is that the economy is maybe kind of coming back to the pre-pandemic picture. Inflation has, for the most part, been tamed. Interest rates are eventually going to come down. Prices are still very high. But what we hope that means, to answer your question directly, is that from a corporate giving, we expect to actually start to come back, and we're seeing some evidence of that. So for those of you that are already pursuing corporate partnerships, that might be a better climate for that during this year. Overall, our projection for the economy in Marin is pretty strong. And the main reason is that what got us through last year, not just Marin, but nationally, was the consumer, right? People kept spending. Maybe they didn't like spending, but they kept spending. And that's expected to continue. And in an environment where interest rates might go down, some of the bigger purchases, like cars and appliances, which are sold here in Marin County, we expect to see that purchasing actually go up a little bit. So, we can never tell with the uncertainty of an election year, presidential election, what that might do. There's a lot of geopolitical problems out there that could have stronger effects. I would say at this time last year, everybody was saying for sure there's going to be a recession, and there wasn't. So whatever I say today, a year from now, I might be totally wrong. But we do see this sort of resumption of consumption, if you will, which is overall good for Marin, because if you look at how our economy is structured, very much depends on consumers. In fact, consumers purchasing locally. We are, in one way, overweighted of local service providing type companies. We have actually too many of those in Marin, and they don't have great jobs, if I can say. So we might see a shakeout of some of those businesses this year, which could happen, but otherwise we expect things to be pretty good. In terms of federal dollars being available, the county's a better barometer of that, and I know they're tracking that closely. And again, I do think that we need to tie. I'm going off script a little bit here. We need to tie what happens in our economy to some of these more socioeconomic programs that we see, so that organizations that are funding economic development activities can understand that Marin has an interest in the socioeconomic side of the economic development stuff, which we've never really pursued before, but they're very closely tied. So if you ask me where I hope there's an effort made on grant funding, it's linking economic development with socioeconomic development as well and pursuing funding there. So, long answer.
We have one more question. Over here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Amanda from the Marin City Library. For future use of your data, I'm curious how thoroughly it's broken down and whether you break it down further than zip codes, for example, to disaggregate Sausalito and Marin City data. Is that a thing? And if it's not, is it possible that your office could be generating statistics at that level sometime in the future for example, grant use? Thank you.
Yeah, so all the data we use is publicly available data, so we can't really manipulate it too much. But I have seen Marin City broken out in certain different indicators. So if, contact our office, we'll always find whatever we can find, we'll get to you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. All right. Well, this brings us to the next, I'm going to put this here, the next part of our agenda. Could I get the panelists for the panel discussion up onto the stage? Thank you. I think we're missing one chair. No? Okay. Well, as you know, income and well-being are linked. We know that poverty can alter children's developmental trajectories in cognitive, social, emotional, and physical health. The work of First 5 Marin Children and Families Commission is rooted in the understanding that children who face economic hardship when they are young or who experience deep and prolonged poverty are at the greatest risk for poor outcomes. The effects of poverty and the stress associated with it can affect adult health, poor employment outcomes, high school and college completion. We also know that the rates of poverty tend to be higher among children under the age of 5. And that is true here in Marin County as well. And are compounded by racial inequities and by immigration status. So this is the economics that occur here, poverty that occurs here, affects all of our work. And centering this in this conversation and having these amazing panelists here to talk about the impacts, talk about the hope, but also talk about the barriers, is what I'm excited to moderate today. So thank you for agreeing to be up here. All right. So the question that we ask the panelists is, how are the children? We would like a brief response from each of you about the positive news you see in your particular field, children's health, education, and the improvables. And we're just gonna do this popcorn style. I don't like doing things in a line. I'm a circular person. I like it like that. So who feels compelled to go first? It's just a light question. So easy. Yeah, John, you have the mic.
Yes, I'm holding it. I guess I'm not going first because someone.
Okay. We'll try. Thank you, Jesse.
All right, I guess it's working now, so I will go first.
Good try.
How are the children? Now that is quite a question, and I've been thinking about it for a few days now. And I think the answer depends on the children you're talking about. Some children are doing really well. I think Marin County offers things to all children that are very positive. It's a pretty healthy place to live. health changes from neighborhood to neighborhood, from zip code to zip code. There's a lot of work we can do on that. I think the children are doing better in general, and I'm talking from the school perspective. By the way, I'm John Carroll. I'm the Marin County Superintendent of Schools. So very big picture, 30,000-foot view, really from the public education perspective. I think the children in general, and there obviously are going to be huge exceptions to this, are doing better than they were during the pandemic and better than they were last year in terms of things like school achievement, mental health. The amount of work that my office and other partners have been putting in on student mental health has been profound. Even when it's hard to measure, we know that it's important to be providing counseling, wellness centers, things like that. And I think that has, I think it because it's true, has blossomed in Marin County over the course of the last year. We are seeing really excellent services in every district, and at the county office level, we've been able to assist with that. I'm really proud of the work we've done opening a new department, health, safety, and support, basically an outgrowth of what we did for supporting students and teachers during the pandemic, and have kept that rolling. So I think that's going well. We have a long way to go in terms of a few things. One is I'll start with three big pillars that we're working on at the Marin County Office of Education that we think will support racial equity. The research tells us they will. I'll start with where we're getting some positive traction. Not talking too long about it, take up all the time, because my friends in the front know that I could talk about this for several hours. Career technical education, which provides relevance in school, keeps kids engaged in school. That is really becoming very robust. Thank you to the philanthropic community, to local government, Marin County Office of Ed, and our local schools. I will just mention the crown jewel, which is at Terra Linda High School, the CTE Center that is opening up. It's already started, but we're going to have, I think, completions in 2026, where we'll have various training programs in healthcare, trades, all kinds of building trades. That's going really, really well. So, and across the county, we're seeing a focus on work-related education. So that's huge, going in the right direction, but still plenty more to do. The second thing is reading. We have not been as successful with reading achievement in the entire nation for a while. That is taken off in Marin County. We have had 2 consortia for teachers, over 200 teachers, am I getting that right? 200 teachers from Marin during summer vacation showed up to get the latest training on the science of reading. It's going really well. I expected some resistance to that, and we haven't seen it. There's like enthusiasm and it's about time sort of attitude on that. So I think academically we hope to see some improvement in reading. And then lastly, I think the thorniest problem we have is early childhood education. We know that that is probably the biggest leverage point that we could find for increasing student success throughout life. And we haven't been able to get, or at least my perception, having soaked in it for a year, my first year in office, of trying to get my mind around the problems with early childhood. We do not provide enough early childhood options for kids in Marin County. That's something that we have a lot more work to do on. Hopeful, but I think that's an area that I think, I'll say something a little bit provocative. I think there are some adults who need to get out of the way of other adults to make sure that we're serving all kids. Kids come first. And yeah. All right, how's that?
You did it. Mic drop. Great. Who would like to go next? Yes. Should I remind you of the question?
No, I haven't.
Okay, you got it? Good.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jose Rodas. I'm one of the parents here in Marin County, one of the parent representatives, and I'm also at the Marin County Free Library. Yes, we have a good group. And how are the children doing? We know, from a parent's perspective, my wife and I work really hard to be able to be in the community. My kids are in Luz Sutton in Novato, and one of the things that we've noticed is there's been, one of the cool things is I'm starting to notice Spanish-speaking kids becoming bridges because we had an influx of immigrants coming. I don't know if you've spoken to anybody in the schools, but I've had friends in so many schools talk to me about having 5 to 12 new families, new kids coming to schools. And so when you don't have the capacity to be able to teach them, you have kids who actually speak Spanish and are becoming bridges for them. So in my instance, my kids are fully bilingual, so they're able, and I'm sure this is not the case for everybody, but I really make an effort to take care of my kids to make sure that they are are doing above and beyond. And so they're able to help other kids. So they come to my house, they come from school and I ask them, how you doing? And they tell me, I just met this new kid who does not know how to speak English, but they paired him up with me. And one of the things I could do is I can help them to become more resilient, to be able to talk to other kids, to be able to continue to learn the language so that they can actually, help them out. And every year for the last couple of years, my kids have been part of that. And so one of the things that I would hope, one of the improvables would be for the schools to sort of have this knowledge of knowing that these kids are doing this, yes, but we should also have the adults sort of mentoring these kids or actually taking that work even a little bit more seriously because, kids shouldn't have that weight either way. It's great that they do it, but they shouldn't have that weight on them. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's linked to what he's saying,
Okay.
so I think it makes sense.
You can introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Joanna Simonini. I'm the Director of Immigration Legal Services at Canal Alliance. So I think this is a great segue to what I have to share with you. Since fiscal year 2020, Marin County has received 1,140 unaccompanied children in this county. This is per capita, this is greater than any other county in the Bay Area per year. Last fiscal year, we received 281 minors. The year before that, we received 382 kids. That was a record year. These children are coming mostly from Guatemala. The ones who end up here are coming from Guatemala. They are 14 and 17, between 14 and 17 years old, 58% male, 42% female. A lot of them are indigenous, so they speak both Spanish and an indigenous language. I think that's important to flag. Most are fleeing gang violence, a lot of gang violence, lack of opportunity to continue studying, poverty, hunger, usually caused by climate disasters and climate change also. So these families have had to make the very difficult decision to send these kids here. What's positive is that they made it. They are here, and we can help. And Canal Alliance and other organizations are already doing that, right? We have a social services department helping them navigate the release to the families in Marin County. Then when they arrive, they help them navigate enrolling in school, enrolling in public benefits, everything. We have an education department that offers ESL classes. We have a workforce department that offers vocational courses. So when these kids have to get out of high school at age 18, they have an option to take a construction course or a nursing assistant course. And we have an immigration legal services department, which is what I do. And we offer consultations and we offer representation. The problem is the capacity, right? We have limited capacity, so there's a lot of room for improvement there. We need more capacity in all of these areas. Just to give you an idea, this last year, 2023, ILS, my department, consulted with 222 kids. We currently have 288 pending cases for unaccompanied minors. These cases take about 4 to 5 years to conclude. It's very slow. We initiated 85 new cases last year, and this year we were able to secure more funding. So we're going to be taking 120 of these cases, new cases, and we are currently applying for another 40 cases. Hopefully we can get to 160. It's still not enough. There's more that can be done here. I'm going to stop here and talk about other things.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Denia Candela, and I'm with the County Office of Equity. So really, truly a pleasure to be here. I love the framing when we started talking about in terms of like how are the children doing, and the children are doing just as well as our families are doing, right? So, and really specifically thinking about
Black Indigenous children of color and how Black Indigenous families of color are doing here in Marin County, and the critical markers of health and well-being that allows us to think critically in terms of like how a household is doing, how mama is doing, how dad is doing, how the household holistically our systems are doing. So to talk a little bit about kind of what we're doing, the Office of Equity just presented to our board in the Race Equity Action Plan that really do speak to some of those building blocks, talking about housing, talking about mental health, really talking about all those important factors that contribute to that holistic picture in terms of like what is it that our children need, what is it that mom needs, what is it that dad needs, to really think that through that lens too. I can't help to speak on the comments that were just shared here behind me and really just being able to elevate and uplift that. And I was gonna save this for the later, but it's also about thinking about are our institutions and systems ready for our children? Are our systems and institutions ready to serve Black, Indigenous children of color? Having Indigenous children come to this county is an asset to this county, to the future of Marin County, and really building blocks that allows us for better generations and moving forward. So we have to really ask ourselves, our families will continue to do better and improve and make progress if our systems and our institutions are ready to serve them as the people and the adults that are accountable for the outcomes and well-being for our kids. So I wanted to frame that there and really just speak on that. Thank you. You know, and again, we can go on and talk about, but one of the other examples, and I'll talk a little bit after later, is our participatory budgeting work. I'll talk about it a little bit later, really center in community building design that it clears and it calls out for specificity and being really race-centered about our approach. We know where the disparities lay. We need to be intentional about where investments are. And we also need to think about what are the structures and infrastructures that are needed to address those disparities. Does that mean funding? I'm sure in the room I'm gonna hear yes, right? So it's really thinking about that critically. And yeah, I'm just really excited. Thank you for allowing some space here. Great, thank you. Thank you. Who would like to go next? No.
I was trying to go last so I could just say ditto. So everything I heard so far is great and right on the money. And I would say, just in addition to that, I've been really encouraged by some of the, let me pause, John Logan, VP for Community Engagement at the Marin Community Foundation. And so, just in terms of what I've seen positive, a couple emails that have come through my inbox, one from the city or the San Rafael Unified School District, just announcing this new partnership, public-private partnership with Community Action Marin and the district to create an early learning early childhood education center. And I just think that's a beautiful thing. We have another example, the Marin Horizon School there in Marin City, of where local community groups, nonprofits are working with school districts in really close collaboration in order to ensure that our kids have what it is they need in their earliest years, the most formative years. And so super excited about just that opportunity. I think on the other end, I've been troubled over maybe the last 6 months just to hear of some of the incidences that have happened within the high schools and middle schools around race, and just how is it that we're building a community of the future, essentially building a community of the future that ensures that regardless of your skin color, your gender, your sexual orientation, Marin County is this welcoming place for you. And I think it's so important for us to be thinking along those lines. We could get math and reading and writing right, and all of our kids could be doing that at a really high level. But if they're not ready to engage as citizens and neighbors with each other in future years, then what kind of Marin County are we actually building? What kind of Marin County are we investing in? So I think there's a huge opportunity for us to think about that even more. And it starts early. So how are we creating these diverse early childhood education settings to ensure that our kids are being exposed to each other and learning how to build that that neighborly love that we, I hope we're all enjoying it in this room now, being, in terms of having like minds and supportive of kind of this common cause. So yeah, and I think folks are working on it. So I look forward to seeing how things progress, and look forward to continue to work on it.
Do you want to go, or should? Good morning. Good morning. I'm Chandra Alexander. I am the CEO of Community Action Marin. Jonathan, thank you for lifting up the partnership with San Rafael City Schools, and thank you to my team table over here for all of the work that you do, a table of early education professionals and dedicated to making a better community for all of us across generations. Couple of things that I want to share is to hold the frame of there is a lot of incredible work happening, and everyone here so far has touched on some of the important points of opportunity. I think that we have, recognizing, as Mike was sharing earlier, the real challenges of the county in which we live. I want to pause, though, to say, in answer to the question, how are the children? The children are amazing. The children are amazing. The potential, who they are as individuals, yes, the families, the circumstances, you really well said. We have to do everything we can do to support the systems and structures that support the well-being of the families, as families, in our community, and it's going to be hard work. So a public-private partnership, abilities to create an ecosystem of interconnections is really going to help Marin County create an opportunity for all of us to thrive. And I think that's critically important. One of the things that we do at Community Action Marin to help support that thriving is be really strategic and thoughtful with other partners, school districts included, about how the dollars are coming in and where the dollars are going out in support of the well-being of children and families. And we have to be both focused on the well-being and the outcomes for children, but also on the money that makes it happen. And we can be smarter together in service to those better outcomes if we're paying attention to the federal funding. We're the Head Start grant recipient for the County of Marin, and we're here to partner with you to make those federal dollars fill in when the school district budget is coming up short. We want to be with you at the table in support of centering children and families again and again with what we know is possible for everyone in our community. That's our goal and that's our commitment. I want to highlight two quick bright spots. One is that because of the one-time funding, in large part we received from the state of California and the County of Marin, we were able to, you mentioned this, John, we were able to support the behavioral health like we'd never before. We knew there were challenges through COVID. We experienced those directly in the classrooms, but we were able to resource like never before in support of children and teachers, importantly, to provide our staff with the support they needed and families as well. So I want to lift up and thank our family advocates, our home visitors, those who are doing the work no matter where those children and families are located. Which brings me to the final bright spot, which is that we're bringing the services to where people are. Because we know it's the services to children, but it's also the services, again, that the families need. So creating hubs and pop-ups around our community to say, we're here with you. We're here next to the playground in Marin City. We're here next to public housing. We're here next to the school district. If you're coming in to drop off your child, you've got somebody in public school, and we're here to provide those social services supports that you might need. But we have to do this together in conversation with one another to create the efficiencies, to be more effective, to leverage those dollars and that investment that we have. Thank you.
Who would like to go next?
Hello again. My name is Lisa Levitt, and I'm a pediatrician, and I work at Marin Community Clinics. And I'm actually filling in for Dr. Jessica Holman, who is our current First Five Commissioner, and she was unable to be here today. But so what is some positive news? I'm just going to tick off a few things. Children at MCC receive very high-quality medical care, so I'm not going to focus too much on that. I'm going to focus more on sort of what keeps me up at night. And that is the social determinants of health as they affect physical health and mental health, always mental health. Thankfully, there's been more attention paid to mental health, especially during the stress of the pandemic. More monies come from the state to improve mental health services, payment for enhanced care providers for our most at-risk patients. During the pandemic, I really witnessed a lot of exciting collaboratives here in Marin. The Suicide Prevention Collaborative, Marin 9 to 5. Successful models of actually bringing many voices together for a common goal. I was really impressed by the youth in Marin County and their ability to voice their priorities and lead us into the future. And I think we can really listen and amplify and support our teens, and we don't need to speak for them. We can listen and follow their lead. As John has mentioned, we have some exciting news in the high schools. There's new wellness centers at Terra Linda High School, San Rafael High School, Novato High School. We're looking at wellness at the middle school level and all the way down to elementary. So we're expanding and we're starting younger, all the way down to the very important 0 to 5 years. I'm excited about the community schools model and that's full of possibility for family engagement. Mobile crisis services are now 24/7. Yet there's also challenges that come with sort of having more dollars coming in. As we've mentioned, this county it's a story of 2 Marin counties. If you have the ability to pay out of pocket, your chances of getting help for your mental health issues, they're higher, but can still be challenging. We all know about workforce challenges, especially difficult finding bilingual, bicultural providers. There's a primary care crisis. There's not enough primary care providers here locally, including Marin Community Clinics. Not enough providers means longer wait times for appointments, wait lists. Telehealth has been helpful. That was an exciting service to get funded. However, there's a delicate balance between telehealth and in-person. Many children are better served by in-person. There's a lack of inpatient services for kids in crisis here in Marin, as we know. A lot of those inpatient services are provided out of county, which is difficult for parents. I think a big challenge will be communication between service providers, communication between Marin Community Clinics and the schools, the county behavioral health, our community partners, partnership health plan. I think the exciting news is that we'll be able to start paying case managers, peer mentors, promotores. There'll be more services provided in the schools. However, that also means there's going to be a greater need for coordination and communication between all the different service providers. The system is confusing and it's complicated. I think, some possible solutions are a common communication tool, universal consent for exchange of information. And then I'm really happy that we've raised up the issue of the growing number of newcomers in our schools and how that impacts how we provide care. And then funding. One of my biggest concerns is having a steady stream of funding for these programs that have been funded by limited grants. How can we work better with our Medi-Cal, with our partnership plan, to ensure more robust mental health services and easier access to those services? You want to take it away, Matt?
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm Matt Willis, Public Health Officer, substituting for Lisa Santora, who's ill. Ditto. That's all I'd say. I got to do that. This question reminds me of a question that Mary Jane Burke, who is, I think, one of my heroes and mentors, she always posed that question, how are the kids, through the craziness of the pandemic, trying to figure out the policies and procedures in the schools, helped me, I think, achieve focus through 5 very simple words, which it's all about the kids. It's all about the kids. And it really, like, as simple as that and silly as that, it really was super grounding for me in terms of guiding, because there were so many other influences on how we might make decisions. And really focusing on what's best for the children was an important focus. And I think that's one of the things I think I want to carry forward here is that lesson I learned in terms of focus. The other phrase that Mary Jane used that I always think about and learn from was, "It's going to be great," which was one word. One word. It's going to be great. So that optimism. So the combination of focus and optimism. And I think from how are the kids in terms of the optimistic stance on that, it is this room. I think honestly right now this is the largest group of people I've been inside with in like 5 years or 4 years. I mean, and it says a lot about this community. I've been health officer for 10 years here. And over the pandemic, I got to see a little bit about how health is practiced or public health is practiced in other jurisdictions across the state. And when you come into a community, you don't necessarily recognize what's unique about that environment. And one thing I've learned about Marin is that one of our unique assets is this kind of forum, this kind of gathering, this kind of collective energy around a problem. That is a unique Marin thing. Marin has been ranked the healthiest county in the state of California year after year by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Obviously, a lot of that is sort of an inheritance of known relationships between wealth and privilege and health. But there is also an element of a secret sauce there, and I think it is the sort of instinct and culture within Marin to be intolerant of the kind of inequities that we see, and to actually come together in a deliberate way and an intentional way to address those. So I just want to express the gratitude to this group from the public health standpoint for all the work that everyone does, and also that's the positive aspect of this. In terms of what I stay up and thinking about, I've got 3 kids. My wife says, "How are the kids?" It's not just they're all great or they're all not. It's one by one, right? And that's how it is in Marin. It's like some are, as John said, some are doing better than others. What I see as one of the biggest challenges right now is sort of at 2 levels. One is cultural and one is structural. Culturally, there are some really unhealthy norms in Marin, right? I think about substance use, for example. Our kids, year after year, have substance use rates that are about twice state averages, right? For cannabis use, for binge drinking use. That is a public health issue. I mean, that's true across the community, in all communities, right, regardless of socioeconomic status, and that is cultural. So I think we need to be working on that level in terms of the soul searching at the community level to understand what's behind that, what is normative in Marin, and how do we change those things. But I think more importantly, it's the structural elements that drive inequities in Marin that keep me up. And it is a paradox to me in some ways where we have such a highly resourced community. We have people that perhaps superficially endorse values of equity. We are very liberal, we're very blue, and yet when ballot measures come along, like that failed, right? When we wanted, was like 7 years ago, I was just early on. It's like, how does that happen? How do we help people sort of put your money where your mouth is, really, literally, when it comes to equity? And I guess I'll end with just one, if I have one sort of message from sort of an epidemiology standpoint or a public health standpoint. The return on investment for health and well-being, thinking broadly, not just health, but actually social well-being, the earlier you go in life, the greater that return on investment is. And it begins literally at pregnancy, right? Or even before pregnancy. But when we start seeing, and in Marin, we look at data, we start seeing disparities emerge immediately, right? By race and income. Like literally, like the prenatal visits, you already see differences emerging. Low birth weight, right? Less healthy infants you see emerging. And then those differences just continue to grow over the life course. So we need to invest more in very early, like as early as we possibly can. And that's one of the reasons why this relationship with Marin 9 to 5 and First 5, I think, is such a critical partnership for us from a public health standpoint. And that's our commitment from Health and Human Services, is really to work with you strategically to try and get as early in the life course as we can. And the Medi-Cal funding right now with Cal-AIM, I'll just end with Cal-AIM. That's a term that is important. We need to really understand Cal-AIM. It is actually profound economic reform of the healthcare system to try and address social determinants of health using Medicare and Medicaid dollars coming from the federal government for us to actually, and we have to think strategically within Marin about how do we optimize that new funding source to actually get as far upstream as we can in the life course to address those social determinants of health. Thank you.
It was like having Lisa on stage talking about Cal-AIM. Thank you for that. I just want to emphasize that the impacts of poverty extend beyond individuals. It's estimated that child poverty costs the U.S. more than $1 trillion annually in direct and indirect health costs. It increases child homelessness and maltreatment, loss of economic productivity, and costs associated with crime and incarceration. This, starting young, starting in those early years, I believe, and I think most of you here also believe, is where our investment can really flourish. And so thank you for that. The next question, and some of you got to this, was, are there particular gaps that you would like to really lift that you're experiencing in your programs, in your projects, or in your organizations? Yeah.
Yeah, for this, as a parent in the schools, I see a gap in representation, and that's across the board in any organization. 1 out of every 3 people in the county are Spanish speakers. They're Hispanic. And I think this is going to be something that's going to continue on in the conversation in any Hispanic group here in the county. I get parents consistently asking me, questions about the school, questions about the community. And all I can say is every time they see me, they see somebody they could talk to. But that's not the case across the whole county. We have places where people want to feel like they belong, and they don't feel like they belong because they don't see the representation where they go. And I think, even going as far as the first people that meet them, but also the people they see in levels of management, where they see them in higher levels. I mean, if we want to really have the representation, we have to have them at all the levels, not just, at the low level, but at every level. I want to see managers, and I want people to see that all across the county, but we don't see that. And if we're going to have 1 out of every 3 people, I'm always going to fight for representation. So I think representation and communications. So communication, information sharing for non-English speakers, everything that we do with the lens of, can this go out to a community that might need to understand it better? I mean, Spanish, yes, it's spoken by a lot of people here, but we have other dialects that they speak, and we can't get to that part yet, but at least we can try to get to the Spanish part. But yeah, just the communications and representation all across the board. Yeah.
I can talk a little bit about this. I'm going to address my major concerns in the third question, but let me just put this out there. A couple of things that we've noticed there are missing. Other than lack of funding, right, and capacity. We used to have funding for a mentorship program. So the new arrivals, the unaccompanied children, would be matched with mentors, and that was an amazing program. We no longer have funding for that. That's missing. We really need more GED for Spanish speakers, GED programs. There's not enough in Marin. Our clients have been looking for options, and they can't find it. And as some folks have mentioned, we need more coordination between local agencies. I think some of us are doing the same work we can divide and conquer, I think, and we need to do that. We need to get together and have a plan. I'll stop here.
Yeah, thank you. There's, I think, a real opportunity for us to close the educational inequities that exist across our county for children of low income and children of color. We know that across all of our educational milestones, starting with kindergarten readiness, third grade reading, eighth grade math, and so on, we have incredible disparities by race and income. I think the largest opportunity that we have, and it's been touched on, but we're in this room because of the 0 to 5, the early years, is the opportunity that we have to ensure kindergarten readiness for all kids in Marin County. It's going to take a lot for us to get there. Yeah, we can definitely. But that coordination, the focus, the intentional will building across all sectors to say this is what we care about and this is achievable in this county. We've talked about some of the why we can, and if we can't in Marin, where can we? Atoko mentioned that as well. We have the ability to do this. We do have to shift how we're thinking. We have to shift the narrative and the stories that we're telling, even amongst ourselves about who those people are. No, these are us. We are those people. We are those people, right? So if we can focus on kindergarten readiness, I can't remember who mentioned data sharing, being willing to say from the ECE environments, the early education environments, no matter where, homes, centers, private, it doesn't matter, that we are doing those relationship buildings with TK and kindergarten. What an incredible opportunity TK is for us to, as Jonathan mentioned, we have a partnership to focus on early education, bring services to where people are. Let's do more of that to create that sense of we're in it together, that we can make this happen, that we have the will and the right people in this room now to say, we're gonna change the story, we're gonna change the systems and structures to make it work, to make every child in Marin County ready and successful at kindergarten and beyond.
Thank you. I love that segue into systems level work and institutional approaches to really think about the structures that are in place that are really blocking us from getting to the next level. And the more I think about this, I'm like wearing the Office of Equity hat. I'm also a mom of a 3-year-old. I'm right in the thick of it, you guys. So it's one of those things. And I serve as a vice chair for the Sonoma County First 5 Commission. So there's that too. In doing this work, you see similarities, right, in regional approaches that could be taken, and what do we learn from our partners across each other. And the one thing that I always come across, and it's very true with the work in the Office of Equity, is really building systems that are really truly centered in community design. So like really truly equity design, programming, services, systems that are reflective of the communities that we intend to serve, right? So if we're seeing disparities in equity work also, we like to think that equity is a process, but it's also an outcome. And that outcome actually requires us to seek for the solutions to the challenges that our institutions are facing within the people that are experiencing those inequities. Like those voices are meant to be uplifted, and they have the expertise and the wisdom to tell us what it is that they need most of the time, right? And whether sometimes we gather a focus group, and then I have a best friend who's like, that notes that lead to nowhere, because she's been part of like so many focus groups, and she giggles about it, and yet I'm like, man, and really tapping into the ways in we collect data, what is our methodology, what is our intent and purpose, and then how do we plan to be accountable to that? So I think of equity program design and really valuing the voices of the people who are centered when they're facing these inequities. And we have folks in this room who work very much closely, who are also have lived experience in this room, right? So like we have that ability to build the systems and the institutions that we want to see for the people where we're seeing the inequities are. And like the other part is like cultural responsiveness, cultural sensitivity, being embedded in those programs and delivery of services is something that we continue to explore. I mentioned PB earlier, participatory budgeting was really grounded in that, in making sure communities knew what they wanted the dollars to go to. and really developing the ideas and the proposals that were really grounded in that expertise and wisdom from the people who are experiencing those inequities. So it is such a major theme in here. And when our doctor and our health officer was speaking, I couldn't help to think also of Black and brown moms and the way that they experience systems of care and their experience being totally different, right? And yet when you think about equity program design, like we really think about that through, what are those experiences? What are the challenges, right? How do we make sure we have representation of like BIPOC doctors? Do we require a regional approach to that? What are the systems and what are the challenges and where we push our institutions to do more than the status quo, right? Because it requires us to do so. Those systems don't exist yet. It is our job to make sure we develop them and think through them. And we have the expertise in the room. And I see a full room full of people with so many different experiences and lived experience and the knowledge to get that done. So I'm hopeful, and I feel like as a county, we totally have the ability to do that together and collaboratively and cohesively for the well-being of our kiddos.
Oh, I see.
Thank you. To kind of piggyback a little bit off of what Chandra said, there's something that's occurred to me over the last year or so, and it's really an economic issue. If the goal that we're after is to have healthy, functional adults, regardless of race, income, et cetera, living good, healthy lives, and being people with agency, participating in a democracy, where do we apply the resources that we need? And I look at the K-12 school system, and to me there's something really wrong with it. Did you know that school isn't mandatory until first grade? Like, kindergarten's optional. Like, you don't even have to send your kid to kindergarten. At first grade, you're required to, the compulsory education law. But before that, I think that's this antiquated thing that we used to think that school was really, family took care of the kid until age 5, and from then on, the school would step in and do help along with that. But we're in a different world now. And if we were to say, all right, where do we put our resources to make things better for all of us into the future? Ooh.
Oh.
Not sure. Mood lighting. Being the parent of a 19-year-old who's at college and a 22-year-old who is away at college as well, and remembering what it was like to have little kids, the energy we put in from birth through 5 is going to have a way bigger impact on their success than what we put in when they're in grade 12. So I was a high school teacher. I used to teach 12th grade. I think preschool is more important than senior year of high school, and yet we put a lot of money into senior year of high school. I'm gonna get some backlash for that for sure. But I have an agreement with my son, who's like a perfect poster child for this, who is I'll brag about him a little bit. He is a straight A student who's a starting soccer player at Lewis and Clark College and got in on an academic scholarship. Everything's going great for him. His senior year was sort of like, well, whatever. I'm exaggerating. He worked hard his senior year, but it wasn't like this pivotal thing. I mean, he was pretty much ready to go as a junior. He was adopted from the foster care system, pretty severely disabled as a little kid. And the effort and the energy and the public resources that went into his care when he was an infant up through about age 4, that's why he's at college, not because of his art history class, which he loved the art history class. But if we can look at the system that way for all kids, put the money in early, what we're fighting against is this really old system where we have, well, school starts in kindergarten. And school doesn't start in kindergarten anymore, and we have to get over that, and that the system has to be opened up, somehow broken, rethought to look at it more globally and put the energy and the money where the leverage is going to make the most difference.
I think my answer to the question where are gaps is probably in the boring but important category.
We'll take it.
And I even myself in my role as public health officer, when I recognize it's part of my responsibility to sort of understand like what's happening at the state level and how does that translate into resources at the local level. What's happening right now, there's so much change, right? I mean, the pandemic and then post-pandemic, CalAIM and I'm really glad to know there's more on CalAIM, because that sort of arrived, and it is radical and complex. And there's sort of an intellectual process that we need to engage in together to really even understand CalAIM in its nature and what it could mean for us, and how we would need to change our systems to optimize what is really a new way of potentially funding social programs that the money had been previously invested as far downstream as you could get into what's happening in a healthcare setting. So that's one. The other, I think, is getting out of our own way on the sort of like legal compliance stuff around data sharing. It is completely the cart leading the horse, and it happens over and over again. And it's been one of my chronic frustrations, because like Mary Jane, it's all about the kids until someone says, well, you can't share that data because of X. And you know that if you were able to share the data between systems, you could actually do much better care, right? Like Lisa said, we need to have what MCC sees in the course of a child's life is so important for the social services people to see. And right now, boring but important, we can't see those things across systems more than we can because of the way in which we've designed notions around privacy and compliance and legal exposure. So that's an important element, I think, of our collective progress, is to completely change the culture and the technical elements of data sharing so that we can actually see our children together.
So Matt, you mentioned going back 7 years ago to Strong Start and this idea of this county coming together and saying collectively we want to create a public funding source for our young people. And let me just say, there's like a lot of money within school districts and through Head Start and other public sources of funding that come in, but it's not enough. There's certainly gaps that we still see. While we have really great providers in the early childhood education space and development space, the amount of money that they get paid to do the work is not right. And as a county, as a community, we need to be aware of what some of these numbers are, and also understand that us in this room, the 250 of us, we have a county of 220,000 folks or so, 250,000. They need to know this story as well. And so just this idea of us being part of the narrative machine around what's happening in the space with the intent and with the goal of creating public will to ultimately say, as a community, we need local resources in order to fill gaps that we see and that we know exist. A big piece of that, I think, ties into what John was mentioning, just the importance, and we all know this, the importance of getting young people as early as possible and making sure that they have what they need. And so, since we understand this and we've talked about it for many years, it's time that we think about like organizing. How do we organize? And 250 folks in this room is a great start. This is a really powerful group, but without doing an interview and a census of each and every one of you, I would imagine that we're not always on the same page in terms of what needs to happen, the sequencing of when certain things happen, and I think we need to figure that out. Like, we need to get on the same page, and we've been a part of developing a ECE roadmap with many of you all in the room. First Five was a instigator of that work, and Pagaz here, and she was a part of that. Aideen, I saw Aideen back here. Chandra's been engaged as well, and many others, Supervisor Lucan. And so that type of roadmap, which will be released pretty soon, is the type of thing that we can all grab a hold of, figure out like what is the role that we play within the strategies that are identified there. And then how do we do it together? How do we work together in order to do it? Because I just think that there's a tremendous amount of power individually within organizations, and to see that power mobilize across the county, I think would just be a really important thing, a great statement for us to make, What a great moment to put a flag in the ground saying that, you know, our kids are better because of the great work that we do together. So that's a gap, but I think we can close that gap. It'll take people power, but I think we can certainly do it.
Was that a call to action, John Logan?
Yes, it was.
I knew it was. That's some organizer right there. Thank you. All right, we have about 5 minutes and 2 questions left. So I'm going to ask that those who feel so compelled and have something they've been holding on and really want to say, take this moment to do so. Yes, I know you did. You are prepared, it is true.
I've been waiting for the third question. So I want to talk to you about immigration legal services for the unaccompanied children. These kids, when they cross the border, they are put in deportation proceedings, so they have to attend court. And if they don't get representation, they're going to be deported. And you don't get free representation in immigration court, you have to find an attorney to represent you. So that's a major concern. The other major concern is that most of the kids arriving in Marin County have a form of immigration relief available to them, but they need to file for that relief before they turn 21. So there's a deadline. So if they do not find representation before they turn 21, they're done. And a lot of them don't have another form of relief available. And what does that mean? That means that most of these kids can become citizens, right? They're going to become legal permanent residents and then citizens. And they're going to have immigration status. And having immigration status opens a lot of doors, right? Work-related, education-related. It is definitely a social determinant of health, as Matt was mentioning. And if they don't have immigration status, a lot of doors are going to be closed. They're going to get a deportation order. They're going to still be here, most of them, but without status and with a deportation order to worry about. So that is very extremely limiting to them. So yeah, it's up to us to kind of get together and decide, you know, how they're going to live the rest of their lives here, if it's with status or without immigration status. Thank you.
Yes.
This is super short. I was looking at the numbers this morning. Our measles, mumps, rubella, our measles vaccine rates in Marin County, above 99% for kindergartners, which is the highest they've ever been, ever.
Oh, wow.
And it's some of the highest in the state. And we, about 7 years ago, were one of the lowest in the state. So change is possible, culture change, policy, access, and hopefully that can be a model for, it's a small piece of progress, but I think it serves as an example of the fact that we can actually change.
That we can do it. Thank you, yes.
So one last, hopefully positive thing to end on, super brief, but, and I'm not saying this just because of our 25 years celebration today, and I'm not saying it just because I was a commissioner, but Marin First 5 has been a tireless champion for children 0 to 5, supporting early intervention services, focusing on prevention, lifting up the child care crisis, lack of resources for children who are at risk for delays. And I really want to also lift up the Marin Communication Forums that are organized and led by Michelle Fideli. And express my gratitude. This is a model for community education on the issues that affect our children. Always the most timely topics. It brings together a broad group to learn and problem solve together. So thank you, First 5, for being community leader, funder, innovator, convener for 25 years. And hopefully many more into the future.
I'll keep this part short. There was a last question about kind of like what's positive, of like kind of like what helps you kind of feel your fuel, right, for this work and the things that we do. And I couldn't help but to think also about feeling empowered by our generations to come. Like the children that we're raising have a whole different expertise. Like I learn every day from my kids, and really truly being empowered for those generations and their ability to challenge systems, to challenge us, to think about critically about the solutions that we're putting moving forward in the table to create better outcomes for them, and really being grounded that when we do this work, it's not about my 3-year-old, it's about the community that she's gonna live in and she's gonna be a part of. And being grounded in community is so, so important for this work. And I can't help but to just feel super empowered. There comes a times where you're like, shoot, I didn't have the language to do this back in my day, but my kid does. And that is powerful, and that's empowering, and that's an asset in the way that our kids, and the way that we foster environments for our kids and moving forward. So seriously, to organizing, absolutely, like let's organize, let's bid systems together, and please think of us in the Office of Equity as your partner in that, in the way that we do this work. So onward, adelante.
Adelante. Woo! This will be our last one as we start to transition to lunch.
All right, so one of the things I really wanted to mention that was really like number 3 was what was one of my deepest concerns, and what's a positivity, right? One of the things that keeps me up at night is the decline in public school enrollment in the county. I mean, we have a decline in every single category except one. Where's the decline? Hispanics. That's the only area that grew. So when we look at the decline, one of the things I was worried about is closures of schools. We've had this conversation in Novato where multiple parents are always asking, is my school going to close? What am I going to do? How far am I going to have to take my kids? So that's something that always keeps me, like, that's something concerning me. But one of the things that I find so positive about this is every time I come to these forums, I'm always extremely hopeful. Because when I see everybody that's here and the work that they're doing, and when I have conversations with different groups, I am so glad that we have these forums again. I've been coming for 10 years almost, since I can remember, and every single time I leave, I always leave with hope, because I see the work that everybody's doing, and I am a champion for collaborations. I'm a champion for data, so I love data, and I hope that through this, we can connect with each other and sort of find ways that we can collaborate together so that we can make the difference in every age.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank our panelists for gliding us into the lunch hour. Thank you so much for lifting your hope and lifting your barriers and sharing those with us. I'm so appreciative. And don't forget John Logan's call to action.
I'm sorry to interrupt your lunch, but I heard that the main presentation is going to be happening soon. My champion for children could not get here because she was teaching transitional kindergarten. So I'm happy to call up Hope Feldman. Come on up, Hope. As probably most of you know, it is almost impossible to get substitutes, and so she just couldn't get a substitute, but she's here now. And Hope has been an early childhood educator in Marin City and Sausalito for 13 years. She, as I said, is currently a TK teacher. She has been a kindergarten teacher. She did Reading Partners before that, and she is part of the team of educators with Bridge the Gap, the organization that I lead. She is exactly what we need as a partner working to improve educational outcomes in Marin County, something we have heard repeatedly, I think almost every minute this morning. She is dedicated, hardworking, so easy to work with, and I just adore working with her. I wish I could be in her TK class. So Hope, it's an honor to present this to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, the time has come for me to present, like I said, one of my sheroes. I've had a chance to work with her closely over the years. I've also had a chance recently to work with her on home visiting cost modeling for within California and the first 5 California work that we do. The woman I speak of is Gina Capito. She has been working in the prenatal to 5 field for nearly 25 years with experience including the management of childcare programming, early Head Start, developmentally oriented pediatrics, national home visiting models, child welfare programming. Gina has focused on the development of state and local initiatives to increase quality of programs, access by families, capacity of professionals and communities through systems change across social service agencies, education systems, home visiting services, public health programming, and healthcare systems. Gina's work has involved managing projects including the development of birth to 3 early learning guidelines, recommending and implementing quality support structures for home visiting, crafting national scale learning communities across Head Start and child care with their respective federal offices, managing comprehensive fiscal analysis and cost modeling projects, and building a technical assistance structure for collaboration building. Gina has a strong working knowledge of both state and local systems, including work on policies and recommendations to ensure that systems at each level inform one another and are built in response to the characteristics of each other. Without further ado, I present to you Gina Capito, or Capito, excuse me, Gina Capito.
Hello, everyone. Is audio? Okay. Okay, so everyone can see me and I can't see anyone. Just wanted to confirm. And that's one thing that Maria and I didn't talk about at all in doing this. I wish I was with you in the room so I could see you all and break bread with you as part of this keynote. We definitely didn't talk about that while I was going to be zoomed in. It would literally be you all seeing me and I can kind of see a room. It's a little blurry, but all right, that's great. I thank you, I appreciate that. We turn off the filter, then I'd be able to see you all taking bites of your salad and things. But thank you. Well, let me start by thanking Maria for the very generous and kind introduction. I appreciate the kind of going over some of the different things that I've done over the course of my career, more because of the framing of thinking about things systemically, because that's where we're going to go this early afternoon. We're going to talk a little bit about how you as community leaders and as a community working on behalf of young children in Marin County and your individual county communities within the county can really be leveraging your power to push for system thinking. And again, I do wish that I could have joined you in person, and I hope that this is just the beginning of systems thinking and conversations together and support for you as a group. I wanted to just start with a little bit of introduction to prenatal to 5 fiscal strategies, because the nature of the nonprofit that Simon Workman and I founded really aligns with what we have heard are the opportunities that are in front of you as a community right now. There is the talk of potentially increasing investments. There's the talk of really identifying how the services that you have in your community are meeting the needs of children, and whether there needs to be different services, more services, better reach of those services. You have a lot of opportunities for growth, and thinking about how you do this from a systems vantage point is one of the sort of biggest pieces of next steps. That sort of how we go about doing something is as important as what we set out to do. I do have a handful of slides that are going to guide our discussion today, so I'm going to screen share, and then Maria's going to let me know if that just throws the whole thing off if I start screen sharing. Or at least you'll give me a thumbs up that you can see the screen when I screen share. Okay. All right. We've all been doing the virtual so long. We should be like so good at it, right? Move seamlessly. But while I'm pulling up the slides, since it's taking me longer than I expected, and now my computer's telling me that PowerPoint's not responding, so it's gonna take even a little bit longer. I'll relate that Prenatal Defied Fiscal Strategies was founded on the premise that there needed to be systems change in order to actually affect the funding, and because fiscal's in the title, so obviously we care about money, and we're talking a lot about money in the work that we do, but that we needed to be really thinking about how the systems function or don't function that our services for families of young children operate within, and that as part of that, we actually needed to also be focusing on field building. That communities in particular are part of states, and the states often hold all the dollars that are coming in from the federal government, and the states may feel very much like they don't have control because the federal government has the money, but communities feel even less like they have the locus of control. And so what we really felt is that there is an issue here around the field, focusing on the types of change that can really support families of young children, that individual communities can only go so far without field change as well. And so that's why I wanted to relate a little bit about the nonprofit itself, because of the fact that it has at its core this idea of, yes, we need to understand how much it actually costs to serve children with the types of services that we want to offer them. We have to understand how we go about administering that funding and how we increase the dollar amount of that funding, but we also need to understand how we change the system that we work within, and that even if we got every dollar that we were asking for right now, we're putting that money into something that is pretty siloed and broken in the way it operates, and that we might not get the outcomes we want, and I would go, I'd put some money on that we would not get the outcomes we want from all those dollars invested into the system as it currently operates. And so that's one of the main reasons that we formed the nonprofit, and I wanted to relate it, because I feel like as a local community, you are at a place where you have an opportunity to really approach what you do next regarding your system and from a different vantage point as well. So I wanted to relate those concepts. All things are functioning in PowerPoint land finally, so now I can share the slides and kind of dig in a little bit more on content. And so what I'm going to do this afternoon through this discussion, and we are planning on having a section of Q&A, so there will be the opportunity to actually for you to ask questions and engage in some discussion together, which I'm really looking forward to. So I'm not going to spend my whole time talking at you. We're going to open it up to you as well. But what we're going to do is talk about sort of three big concepts before we move into that more discussion-based approach. The first we're going to start with is the current realities, and this kind of frames from that vantage point of why a systems approach. So we're going to talk a little bit about the current realities of the system that we all operate in as leaders and champions for young children. We're then going to talk a little bit more about some of the core elements of using a system approach, or kind of answering the question of how do you prioritize what you're going to do next as a community or as leaders working together. And then we're going to talk a little bit, the question that was asked to me by Maria was, how do you finance system thinking? And so I'm going to answer that in a little bit more adjacent way. I'm not going to tell you, well, here's where you go for the money to finance system thinking, because truly financing systems thinking is a very unique blend of funding coming together usually, but it still is that idea of what you're trying to fund to do system thinking that is really important. So I want to close with that as some of the key takeaways as you think about how do we do this work together. It's not just about getting the money to do it, but it's also how you literally do the work together, like how you approach it together as a community and as a group. So the first thing I want to start with in this reality of the current system is a reality of how funding and services come into states and communities. This happens to be the state of Illinois. It's an example from many years ago. You can see at the bottom there's a citation from 2015. I can acknowledge as an Illinois resident, a long-term, lifelong Illinois resident, that frankly it doesn't look that different today. A little bit, some of the boxes have been moved around, and that really nobody looks any different than what Illinois looks like. So at times I think people probably think I'm just poking fun at my own state, when the reality is this is what most states' systems of funding for the prenatal to 5 period look like coming into their state. And I share this as an illustration of the reality that we are all operating within. We didn't create this reality. We operate in it because of the nature of that this is where funding, especially the public funding, comes in for children and families. Some of our families that are furthest from opportunity in particular rely on many of these services in order to keep things afloat in their family. Healthcare, basic needs, early education, therapy for their children, right? All of these things are coming from many different public sources. And I share it to emphasize a couple points for us. One, it demonstrates that we have many different elements of the prenatal to 5 space. And actually, if we really think about just the prenatal to 3 period, it's even more diverse. Once children start to get into the public school system, that age and in our trajectory as how our society is organized, there's a little bit more of a point of entry for children after that age. When we talk about families under 3 years of age, there is not generally a single point of entry that we can rely on, that we can access those families, ensure that they know what's available to them, ensure that they feel supported. We sort of rely on maybe a pediatrician or a family practice doctor, but even that cannot be the best point of entry for every family into our system. So sort of have to acknowledge that there is, by nature of the types of things families of young children need, a lot of actors in this space. It's not just a healthcare question, it's not just a childcare question, it's not just a family support or parenting education or early intervention or therapy services. It's actually all of those things, because we're talking about a very diverse period of development for young children and potential that families are engaging with lots of different community systems based on a stage of their child's development or the context of what might be going on in their home life. And so we acknowledge that. That's sort of the complexity of our system. One of the other realities, and why I share this illustration, is sort of establishing the reality of what we're all operating within, is that it is very siloed in how it functions. And the large part for this is the reality of that the funding, we have 2 major federal funding streams that you see on there, the red boxes, Department of Ed and Human Services. They are huge, particularly Health and Human Services at the federal level. It is a gigantic federal agency, and it has huge agencies within that federal agency that fund all those very different components of the system that supports families of young children. And that is the nature of trying to administer such a large number and diversity of things. So it, in many ways, right, many folks would say it makes sense that childcare is separate from where the home visiting funding comes in, because we're talking about huge, huge government agency at the federal level. When we think about families and we think about childcare and home visiting being far away from each other, geographically and where the money is and all those things, it's sort of a loss, because it means it's harder for families to negotiate a system, to navigate that system when the components of the system are really siloed in how they get delivered in our communities. And that is one of the other major realities of our system. Funding comes into our state, and then it's in multiple departments. In the case of California, a lot of it is in CDSS, but within CDSS, you all well know that there are huge divisions and departments within that one state agency, similar to the size of the federal HHS. That means that in reality we have contract processes, administration of funding, and then the distribution of the dollars and how they hit communities may look very different across all these different funding streams. And they are not necessarily talking across each other, because they have a mission. They are the administrator of the childcare dollars. They're the administrator of the Medicaid or the child health insurance dollars. They have their lane that they're in, and they are working on that role and responsibility. If you think about it from that vantage point, it's not saying that they're doing something wrong, it's just they're focused very much on their objective is to ensure that the children who qualify have access to the child health insurance program, right? Their role is not to then also make sure those children are enrolled in healthcare, or enrolled in childcare, or enrolled in home visiting. And so what we end up with, we refer to all the time as these silos. They're very much driven by where the dollars come into and all of the different contracts and processes that are at those agencies. The intersection across those things at the state level in all of our states is fairly weak, because it's pretty entrenched systems that our states are operating under as well. One of the other things I think is really critically important in this particular illustration is thinking about pressure. And if you see the arrows, you see all the boxes and columns or silos are all pressure down on schools and communities in programs, and then ultimately down on children and families. So we have, by the nature of what one could argue is somewhat of a non-system for children from that prenatal period to 5 years of age, we have a lot of pressure on the communities and programs that are trying to serve them to navigate this very complex and siloed dynamic of where funding comes from and what's available. And then also children and families in particular, to have any clue what you may qualify for, or that you happen to spend 2 years and not even know that your child possibly could have been eligible for early intervention. This is things that we know happen all the time in our communities, and we have to acknowledge just sort of how complex things are. Families could go through one door and be told, nope, this isn't the place that does that. Then they're not told the place that does do that, or that they should go somewhere else. They just get a no, and they often don't keep trying. As a parent of not as young children as they used to be, 13 and 7, I've had many a phone call that I thought I would have given up hours ago if I didn't know what my family was eligible for or what was part of my right as a parent of a young child. And that's someone who's worked in our field pretty much since I was probably about 13 years old. So I spent my whole life working in this field, and I know I would have given up even with that level of knowledge. So families that don't have this sort of sense of what maybe someone is getting public money for and should be able to offer to me, it's very hard to expect that families are going to be navigating these things. And that's where we sort of start to have to shift ourselves to think about, how does the system respond to this? How do we address this at more of a community level? What do we have the ability to sort of pull some levers on? And that's where I move us from what sometimes can be somewhat dejecting, spending too much time on this slide, because it's just like one more layer upon layer of how it's siloed and broken in a non-system, to then moving to thinking about that idea of a systems approach and what pieces of this it can actually be working on, even at that community level. So I want to reinforce this idea of the systems approach a little bit more detail, because in the course of doing this work and systems building and thinking about the idea of how we strengthen systems has been something that I've spent many, many years on. And over the course of that time, I've had a lot of conversations about why, had a lot of folks sort of push back on the why. And what I found to be interesting over the course of these conversations is the need to acknowledge that we are part of a system. If we think back to that slide we were just looking at, no matter whether we want to be part of a system or not, the system includes multiple funding streams, multiple entities administering those funding streams, includes many different programs serving families. These are some of the features of a system. We are part of a system. How we behave and how we approach the possibilities of that system is really what we're challenged with. Even if we want to say, I don't need to take a systems approach, basically we're just sticking our heads in the sand to the reality of that we are part of a system. Because there is more than one funding stream, and there's more than one program that is funded, and more than one family that we're trying to serve. Ultimately, right there, that's the characteristics of a system. And so that reinforces this idea of that it's not just why a systems approach, right? We can use that to sort of galvanize more support for the concept of the systems approach, but also we need to think a little bit about reinforcing that we need a system, because we have diverse communities and diverse needs of families. So there's not one home visiting program that's going to meet the needs of all families. There's not one child care program or one early learning program that is going to meet the needs of all families. Even if we got, again, every dollar that we needed for services, the reality is that families have different needs. Some families choose family child care because it better meets their multiple children in child care at the same time need than a center-based program. Some families choose a school-based child care program because of transportation. These are the dynamics of a diverse community, and we need a system of supports that responds to that. So there's really no way to sort of get away from the system. It's again about how we operate within that. And we know right now that we have no single program or funding stream that could meet all of the need. So that's another thing that we have to be really thoughtful about. It's not as simple as just saying, if we funded this fully, we funded childcare fully. Well, if we fund childcare fully, then we still have family support programs that are not funded at the level they need to be. So we have to acknowledge these things together because it is complexity of things. So this takes us to that idea of it coming down to how we are in the system. And I want to share an analogy that hopefully will resonate with my child development and early childhood colleagues. As you see, children in play. And if you're steeped in this work, you spend a lot of time thinking about children and how they developmentally move through different stages of play. Some of the things we know about children is some elements of types of play are developmentally appropriate later in their early childhood than some are earlier. Sometimes they play in different ways because they need a break from another person. In fact, all things that kind of happen to us too as adults. But what I want to relate this to is sort of how we go about interacting together as professionals within a system. I'm going to pause because I see IT peeking in, just checking to make sure everything's okay. Okay? You're good? Okay. All right. We lost our child development graphic. There we go. Sorry. Trigger happy mouse there. But for the most part, when we think about all of those boxes on the illustration of funding slide, for the most part, we know that, again, we have responsibilities to funding that comes into our state, that comes into our county, and we get in our lane and really hold to sort of our responsibility to the funding. We do know that we should communicate with each other, there's no question. So we spend a lot of time in the lower left corner there in parallel play, and maybe a little bit of associative play when we interact with each other as professionals. And this is something that kind of becomes a little more important to acknowledge and own, because I think we use the term collaboration a lot when we actually unpack what we say we're doing at a table that we call a collaborative. We're doing more of the parallel or associative. We're sharing. Here's what I'm doing today, here's what I'm going to do next week, and then someone else says, okay, here's what my program's working on right now, and here's what we're going to be working on later in the year. We're sharing out kind of in a brown bag lunch style. We are not moving to cooperative or truly shared agenda, shared systems change. We are much more just kind of running parallel to each other and intersecting where we know that we need to, that will benefit families, but we're not getting really deep into, okay, systemically, what could we do together that would benefit families? And so acknowledging it from this perspective is saying that we're not doing something wrong by being more in parallel or associative. In part, it is driven by some of our experiences of my funder is this department at the state and your funder is this department, and they don't give us a lot of flexibility for how we work together, right? So that can often be part of it, and we're doing sort of what we can with what we have in front of us, which is another reason why this has to be a field change. This isn't just a Marin community change. This has to be bigger than all of us to really start to move this change. But acknowledging that and thinking about where are the places where we could push on to move us to cooperative, and I would say even beyond. I really appreciate that those 3 children are doing a board game together, and that's cooperative play and appropriate for children, but I expect more out of us as professionals working together on the broken system, right? We need to go a little beyond that. We need to create the board game, we need to create the change, and then work on it together. So it is a little bit more than cooperative where we're headed, but you see the nature of that there's places where there's other ways of interacting do have an appropriate fit, but we need to always be pushing ourselves and thinking about where we could go further with it. And so on that note, I want to acknowledge that it's not to say that over the course of many, many years and decades of trying to address some of the entrenched issues for programming for families of young children, that we haven't made runs at change. We certainly have, and there's a lot, and I'm sure that across all of your careers, you can point to many different initiatives that you've built, you've cultivated, sought funding for, to try and address some of these things. What I want to raise about this element that we often find in our current approach to doing systems work is that we frequently are focusing more on still within a given element or silo. We're hampered by the non-system and even how we go about trying to address some of what's broken within it. So give a couple examples. Because of the silos, we have a very complex system. We know that the system is inefficient in how it operates. We know it's not meeting families' needs in the way that it needs to, and that we know it's very burdensome for providers and administrators. Oftentimes, we have done things like a cost study of childcare. Okay, we answer some questions about the cost of childcare. That's a solution that is net singular in focus. It is not thinking about, it's not to say we don't need that answer, what is the actual cost of childcare, but in that particular attempt, is really focused on one element of the system, generally one funding stream in most states or communities, and one group of parents and children who qualify for childcare. So it has elements of it that are very singular or siloed, and even trying to address that particular issue and say we need to understand cost. And again, I'm not suggesting that we don't need some of those really discrete answers, but what we need to start thinking about is how we take a systems approach that acknowledges I need singular answers to individual or discrete pieces of my system, but I need to hold it all together as one. That's where we're shifting some of how we approach the work together. And I want to emphasize as we sort of pivot to this idea then of what are some of the 4 ways that we go about this system thinking, why it's so important to do it in this nature. Because as it is important to have the answer to the question of what is the cost of childcare, and I'm not picking on childcare, just happened to be the example I picked for the slide. The reality is we have to be very careful with what we do to one answer to one question so that we don't erode or do something to the detriment of other services that are available to or meeting the needs of other families or communities that we're serving. So, and I'll make that a little bit clearer here as we talk about this idea of starting with a vision. And so to reinforce the idea of starting with a vision, I want to use that example. The reality is that if we have one answer, the answer to the cost of childcare, for instance, and we go full bore at addressing that issue, and we don't think about anything else that serves families of prenatal to 5, we run the risk without, and some may say unintended consequences, others may argue, well, I think they understood those consequences, they were just concerned only with their one problem that they were trying to fix, that there is going to be a ripple. That decisions that we make related to children from birth to 5, if we're not thinking about all the children from birth to 5 when we take an approach to a given policy or decision, it is going to impact more children than just that group. Because we are not talking about a system-wide answer. We're not talking about a system-wide solution. We are taking a broken non-system and trying to impact one part of it. We've seen this happen for several decades now, where that attempting to fix one part of it can be to the detriment of other parts of it. And so this idea of why establishing a fiscal vision can be a benefit supports some of these issues. And I'll give another example. We'll move off of childcare. We'll move on to pre-K, because this is one that whether you're stay in state or you look across the country, this is something that has been going on for years and has had some significant ripples to other systems. The move towards a universal pre-K, state-funded pre-K for children, whether it's 3- and 4-year-olds or only 4-year-olds, there have been, over the course of the years of this work taking place, depending on how it is rolled out, and it often feels like it's not thinking about the whole system when it's rolled out, has had some pretty negative impacts on things like community-based childcare. In some states where the publicly funded or universal pre-K was focused only on school-based delivery systems, it meant that suddenly 3- and 4-year-olds, their families had free pre-K. That meant that those parents oftentimes were choosing the free pre-K and pulling their children from their community-based site. It often meant that the community-based site was not able to access that state-funded pre-K because they didn't meet the qualifications or they weren't the entity that was identified to deliver it, which is a significant ripple in a community-based childcare program who frankly relies on preschool children to be the moneymakers, because infants and toddlers cost a lot of money to serve and no revenue stream covers infants and toddlers. Preschool, the cost of it and the revenue for it gets much closer to making a program whole and can balance the infants and toddlers. So I share this particular example as part of this thinking about why a fiscal vision is so important, because if we think about the work that went into universal pre-K in states where this sort of domino effect or ripple has occurred, it really does address these very concepts that we have competition between infants and toddlers and 3s and 4-year-olds. This is not an unproductive competition, and it's something that none of us support. We need families to have access to services. Is one of those services pre-K? Certainly, but it's not pre-K instead of childcare that families need to go to work. Right? So we have to be thinking about the pieces together. And in the case of the pre-K example, it might come down to the implementation and being open to the implementation occurring both at community-based sites and school-based sites, so that families can access the state-funded universal pre-K and retain their full-day, full-year care at their child care program, which benefits the child care program as well. So it's very much about really unpacking the idea and ensuring that it holds true to a vision that you have for children and families, and that the implementation of it is going to carry out all those principles. And the other reason is that we know that having a broader vision and sort of agenda that you set for what you're attempting to do for children and families is important, is because there are always going to be tensions and pressure points. There's always going to be times where the needs of one population seem to be greater in a given point in time than other populations of children and families or programs that are serving those children and families. So having and establishing more of a vision for the work supports you in weathering those challenges, because you're going to have the challenges. Certainly, in thinking about universal pre-K, hearing someone say to any of us that every child should have a year of pre-K before they go home to kindergarten, none of us disagree with that concept of how important early education is. If the flip of that statement is, and in order to do that, we're going to take money from other programs, or we're possibly going to cause other programs to not be able to maintain their business model, that's a different conversation. So part of what having a vision is supports you thinking about how decisions will impact all ages, all elements of your system, and then what can we do to align on that? That's part of what's key around this idea. How do we be more linking arms and trying to address that issue of all children should have at least 1 year of pre-K before they go to kindergarten together, versus it being a siloed approach to try and solve the problem. It also really allows us to be leveraging across the sectors. So this sort of reinforces how important it is that we are aligning across efforts. I want to then add another dimension to this as far as your systems thinking, and focus on the idea of how important it is to have an overarching strategy around what you're trying to do as well. And so this takes us kind of in a different dimension. So the previous one on vision is thinking across. This is, we good? This is thinking much more about the idea of how you truly approach an overarching strategy. And we all have to have some acknowledgement of this in our careers, that sometimes we stop with the first one on this list, that we want to increase investments. And sometimes we stop with just, I want to increase investments in direct services. Because when we think about what is falling the most behind, and what we have historically not had enough money for, it's always apparent to us all that it's the services to children and families. We know that, and we're not disagreeing with that. What I'm going to push you on is around the idea of that it can't just be that. And it goes back to the earlier statement that we got every dollar that we currently we're tracking that we needed for direct services for children and families, and we would do that money to grow the system. And so we need to acknowledge that with these other concepts too. We need to better align our current investments. We need to strengthen how the funding is administered and the governance of that funding occurs, so that when more money comes in, that increase in dollars is coming into a more efficient, systemically functioning approach to the prenatal to 5 period. So we have to address that. We can't just do one of these things. Sometimes it feels like we spend a lot of time thinking about things like how do we align our current investments, and getting to more money is never going to happen. But what we acknowledge as part of the systems approach is that we have to establish a really strong basis of cause for needing the more money in order to support the attempts at ballot measures, the attempts at appropriation at the federal level, those sorts of things that have to happen. We have to show how well we are using what we currently have, and in addition to the fact that families are going unserved, to really come together around this competent, efficient, well-operating system that new investments can be put into. But that is part of the responsibility for us in trying to approach this system. Maria, I just want to check in on time because I know I'm just 5 minutes before my time, my initial time to end.
Yeah. I think we are approaching a wrap up, but I wanted to also add some questions from the audience, perhaps. So, Gina, so you have a few things more, and then we can get some questions.
Maria, are you saying you want to move to questions now?
You can speak a little bit longer. Yeah. You can speak a little bit longer, Gina. I hope you hear me. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for about 5 more minutes. How about that? Okay. So the next couple things that I'm going to move through them quickly because we are going to make sure you have access to the slide deck is just examples of a comprehensive fiscal vision. I want to highlight the idea that I'm calling it a fiscal vision because it is very much focused on the idea of funding. It's focused on sufficient and stable funding. It's focused on how that funding is administered, the efficiency of the administration of the funding. So it is really thinking about money. And it's thinking about how money comes in and gets utilized and how flexible it is and all those things that we wish for the money. It of course talks about the needs of families, so it needs more money than what our system currently has. But the other reason it's framed as a fiscal vision is because it's designed to be in support of your broader vision for children and families. It is not designed to replace that or compete with it. It is actually designed very intentionally to support. If your goal is all children healthy and ready for kindergarten, whatever your broad vision for children is, this fiscal vision can support you in that effort because it gets into more of the nuances of how do we make that happen with the current revenue we have or the revenue we need to have and think about how we actually do that well. The other critical piece of any vision is building a set of principles. And so I'm going to share with you a sample of a set of principles that could go along with that fiscal vision, where it breaks down the concepts a little bit more, because vision statements are broad, and that's sort of like, what do we mean by that item about stable funding? Principle statements kind of help us. They provide a rudder for decision making. Touching back to that idea, there are times where we run into challenges, or things kind of going head to head, home visiting, pitted against childcare sort of things.
Folks, 2 more minutes of patience, please. Almost done.
Are designed actually support you in that effort. And so there's things in here that are really of critical importance around the idea of compensation to providers. This would be where you draw out those things that are, this is the hill we will die on as a community. We have to be pushing towards it. And we have to be able to measure our share of work together against the principles that we're trying to do. So I share those two as just samples of those concepts in action that several states and communities have adopted and then have built sort of all together associated activities related to. And what the last piece that I promised that we were going to talk a little bit about, so before we go to questions, was the idea of, the question was, how do you finance systems thinking? Before we even go to the idea of actually financing it, I wanted to impress a little bit more about what needs to be inherent to that system thinking, so that when you begin doing it together or doing more of it, doing it more broadly, doing it cross-system, all those sorts of things that I've talked about, that you're covering the core pieces of what you need to be focusing on. And one of the first things, so it's kind of almost like core values that support those principles that we just looked at. One of the first things I want to raise, and I can't not talk about cost and true cost and price here when we talk about fiscal, and we talk about our system, is that we have to acknowledge that what we currently pay for, whether it's direct service or infrastructure support, is just the money that we have available. It is not the cost of those things. And we need to be open to getting on a path that goes from price to cost, which is what we are currently expending, but then acknowledges that that's not even far enough. We actually need to be thinking about some cost, because cost right now includes poverty wages for staff. It includes no health care for a majority of our program. It includes staffing patterns where we know we need 10 staff and we only have 7 doing the work of 10, or even worse dynamics, because that is the reality of what we have available to us for revenue compared to what we actually need to do the work. So we need to be on a trajectory when we think about systems thinking that is acknowledging that true cost is a North Star, and it's going to be a big number, and we have to be thinking about incremental change that is moving us towards that. The other kind of core piece of this that relates to this idea of cost and true cost is also then what you're thinking about the cost for. And so I mentioned this at the outset that we often are very much focused on increasing direct services. And I have just listed a handful of sort of our most common and largest funding streams or types of services for families and young children. But we also need to hold on to those direct services. We know we need to understand that the cost for those services is very different than what they're paid right now. We also need to acknowledge that the system that supports those service providers, the organizations that deliver the services, is also woefully underfunded. That it is funded based on oftentimes what's left over or the very small amount of admin that's set aside. And that is things like training, coaching for programs, the infrastructure of the licensing support team, folks that go out and support visiting programs, all of those sort of regulatory bodies along with quality and the capacity building entities are also woefully underfunded. So as a value, we need to make sure we are doing our systems thinking around true cost and true cost for everything. That's sort of the big concept I want to leave you with before we transition to questions, is that thinking about the system across all services also includes thinking about all of the components of the system. And so with that, I'm going to turn it to Maria to facilitate a little bit of the questions.
All right. So I know it was hard to hear. It's not ideal, and so I apologize for that. Lessons learned. We did have a chance to speak, to really hear from a national leader and really looking at systems and funding systems, that it's not just one-offs, but that it's how we look at it as an integrated system of care for young children. And I wanted to give an opportunity, if there are questions for Gina about this work, if anyone would like to ask a question. Yeah.
While we're doing that, could we just have a quick round of applause for our servers? Thank you so much.
Great. Question? Yeah. Whoever has a question for Gina? Oh, there's one in the back, and then there's Ann. Ann over here as well.
Dave, come on forward.
Thank you, Gina. I'm a Chicago guy, too. I went to Northwestern, so. I was just really thinking about the funding piece through your presentation and really Jonathan's call to action. And it really took me back, was it 10 or 15 years ago when we had that keynote speaker from Florida about what happened in Florida with the funding. And so I just kind of wanted to go back to that and hear from Gina, we really tried here, 6 years ago to have this sales tax and it failed. But I think there's a lot of inspiration in this room to get that rolling again. So any advice you have, we'd love it.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, well, I will applaud you all. I heard that clear as could be. So whatever you did for audio, kudos everyone, because I heard the question very clear, even the part about Northwestern. I think my top of mind reaction or advice would be to really use an understanding of what you're trying to fund with any ask. So if it's sales tax, and how that will, the reality of how much revenue that will bring in related to that big number or North Star. And I raise this because there are, we just did some of this work in Los Angeles County and had a very similar conversation, and where they were going was somewhere in the billions, and the available revenue streams were going to be more in the maybe $1 million, a little over annually. So huge difference. And I'm not saying don't go for the funding, but I think what became very clear to the conversation was how important it was that you don't sell it as if this sales tax is going to solve that multi-billion, because it's likely not, right, as a revenue stream, and we just need to be honest about that. We have spent so many years saying, I just need this much more from the legislature, I just need this much more, when in reality, we're asking for just what we think we can get, not what we actually need, and I think we need to change that. We need to be honest about, I need this much, there's going to be multiple funding streams that are going to have to come together to get me to that. And right now I'm just working on one of those. Because we don't own how much it really costs and how big the gap is. We are constantly going back asking for more, right, with our hands out in a way that's like, well, wait, I thought that thing we passed was going to solve that. And that erodes public trust, and it really does change how folks feel about things like ballot measures or sales tax. So that would be one of my big things, is that have a clear perspective of what your actual ask is, and then acknowledge that there's not one funding stream that's going to solve that ask. We often sell folks, especially the voters, that if they vote for this, they're going to solve the whole thing, when in reality, they're likely not going to. It has to be a mix of things. It's voters and public funding. There's got to be other things coming together for it. So having a really clear understanding of how much you need when you're going for that sort of work, I think, is going to be an important piece.
Hi, Gina. Thank you. I'm Ann Matheson from Marin Promise Partnership, and love this presentation. And I'm wondering, from your experience working across the country, where have you seen communities like ours kind of embrace this fiscal visioning and modeling, and what does it take to make it work? What are the components of success that you've seen?
So there's a lot of places across, especially at the community level. I have to say I've almost probably experienced more community level led drive like this, that's truly comprehensive, thinking across the systems. And I always reflect that I think it's because, it could be because personally I've done a lot of community level work, so that's what I see when I look at our world. I'll acknowledge that, but I actually think it's because communities are the ones that most acutely experience that families are scattered all over in what they're trying to access. They don't know what is available to them. It's communities that are experiencing that alongside families, right? It's communities that are trying to be responsive to families. So communities are often the first ones that are saying, we need to do better. We need to be better organized. Couldn't we have a single point of entry for our preschool, our Head Start, and our child care for preschool fund children, right? Isn't there ways that we can make the burden on families less? It's often the community organizations and the community leaders that are thinking that way, because I think we experience it the most acutely compared to a state, right? States and feds get further and further away from that reality of the family experience. So I do think that this is actually something that is very uniquely communities to do well, because you're also dealing with usually smaller number of organizations when you want to work across health and early learning and family support and basic needs. You often work together already as communities, so coming together and thinking about how you do business maybe a little bit differently is easier because it's a smaller group of folks. We're also attached to our communities, right? So we have a different buy-in to our communities than maybe we do to saying, I'm going to do something at a state level or I'm going to do something at a national table, because the impact can be seen more readily. So I think that the community vantage point, listing the communities, I might not be as quick to be able to do that for us right now, but I definitely can say that I've worked with more communities doing this and doing it all in, truly doing it as a whole system, than I actually have states. States tend to start with, we're going to try and fix childcare, or we're going to try and work on our home visiting system, and then we'll work with the other stuff too. But it's really big to try and fix childcare, or really big to try and address home visiting, and they don't often always get to the whole thing in the same way that a community can. As far as the sort of most critical next step or priority, I would say, is to really think about setting a table of community leadership around this. And there might be more than one. There might be one table that has folks that are business leaders and elected officials that need to be bought in and need to really understand it and believe in what you're doing. They're probably not the day-to-day workers in it necessarily, and that's okay, right? So we kind of think a little bit about tiering involvement, but doing so that really cuts across what families in your community need. Really ensure, and I've worked not only in home visiting, but in childcare my whole life as well, so I feel like a little bit I can say, childcare, we tend to do things like say, well, we'll just invite those people to our childcare table. We'll invite the pediatrician. We'll invite the birthing hospital to our childcare table. They come to our table, then they usually are like, I don't understand why I'm here. This is a childcare table. Really think about community leadership for the initiative that is about how everyone has a role in this system, that it's not one entity's group that others sort of get invited to, so that you really set a leadership style and shared working together that starts from a place of what is everyone's stake in the work, and how is everyone trying to support families and children, right? That it's not that this is just the early learning table and we're going to invite our health partners to it, but instead truly make it a joint table in a way. And I believe from some of our work together that you have that possibility in Marin to really think about it in a different way.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you for joining us all the way from Chicago. Really appreciate it. I know that you're busy with this California State cost modeling for childcare right now, and I wish you luck. I know it's not easy. Thank you so much. We hope to see you in Marin.
Sunnier where you all are, so send me some sun to the dreary Midwest.
So before everyone leaves, we have one last kind of big announcement. It's been something that has been consuming my days, and I think it's something that will help it'll be additive to our community. I am very, very proud to pronounce that the First 5 Children and Families Commission has agreed to open up our funding for fiscal year 24-25, where we will be opening up $1 million to be distributed to projects and programs meeting 6 components of the work. And I think we should applaud our commissioners for taking this brave new step. Thank you. It's exciting, but it's also, it comes with a lot of responsibility. And so, if you could change. As you can see here, these are our core components that we will be funding for the next 3 years. Our RFP is live today. You can go to our website and start working on the application. We are really proud of the work that's went into this. We worked very, very closely with community-funded partners and our community partners to design an RFP process that was equitable, that really took in consideration the times that we're living in, with so much funding feeling a little wonky these days, and how can we cut some of the fat off of the RFP process so our partners can go ahead and apply with ease. We made sure to align it with your fiscal years, to making sure that you would get the notification before your finalized budgets. Thank you, Belandra, wherever you may be right now. She really made sure of that. We got great feedback about this process, and we were really excited to start to implement it in this RFP. And I hope you see, this doesn't mean that our older funded partners are not allowed to apply. Absolutely, please apply. I think you're going to see some of your work really reflected in these 6 sections of the work. We start off with childcare solutions. This is something that we made sure is part of our work and has been part of our work since the beginning. It is a piece of the work that we are excited to align with the soon-to-be-released Early Childhood Roadmap. We then moved into children's mental health and physical health and wellness. We heard you. Our partners and community partners lifted this as a real need, that we're not just working to the kids who can get into services. We're working for those kids who don't qualify, which are a lot of them, and are those kids that we're seeing getting kicked out of preschools, getting kicked out of TK classes. And we really wanted to put an emphasis there, and that was pretty resounding and unanimous from the feedback we received. The other bread and butter piece that we have been funding in this community for, I think, 25 years now, is our school readiness work. We had a long and deep conversation with developmental experts at the table, with our other community partners, about what school readiness means. It's a deep question. It's not just about children being ready, it's about systems being ready. And I think if that is a theme that I heard throughout these conversations today, we also heard it at our table with our community partners. It's about systems, it's about families feeling ready. That's a big transition. My kids are 10 and 15, and I still remember that being hard. It's about lifting some good work right now that's going on and around equalizing that table for families in that transition. So we're really, really excited about that. It's also about family support and parent-led advocacy. There's a lot of work to do on different levels. And we really believe strongly that that parent-led advocacy has also been one of our bread and butter funding streams for a very long time, and we know now more than ever we need to still continue that funding. It's also about maternal infant support, prenatal, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, infant. I look at the postpartum center, I look at Sandra Rosenblum, and I am so excited to be able to lift this up. The earlier we start, the better, and we're excited to put our money where our mouth is. We also then have collaborative efforts to improve systems of education for care for young children and their families. So not just education, notice care. These are systems that have to figure out how to work together so we can serve our young children, a lot of what Gina was talking about. And so we are excited to work towards increasing connections and coordination among early childhood systems of care and learning to ensure services and supports are family-centered, child-focused, easily accessible, equitable, and sustainable. We know that $1 million, wow, $1 million when I was little felt like, wow, you've made it. I know it's not a lot. I'm not going to gaslight everyone in thinking it's a lot. We do have declining revenues, and that's a reality. But we believe that we're all in. We're all in with what little we have left, and we can make that money work for us. And I look at other funders here, and we hope that we can partner with you to make this money work for our community. Thank you. If you can scoot it one more. Just a little RFP info here. We do want to make sure that you are, prioritize. Look at it, I didn't write notes. The RFP will prioritize children 0 to 5, prenatal through kindergarten. Duh, right? It will include proposals and programs for parents and families. It will directly address the reality of First 5 Marin's declining revenue through focusing resources on current community needs. And it will align with our strategic plan and equity statement. Pegah was here, but I wanted to honor her. She worked a lot on the strategic plan, and we worked a lot to make sure that our that this RFP was really aligning with that vision. And so that was part of the work. And then focus on community impact and champion successful or promising projects, programs, and practices. I hope that you're seeing yourselves and your programs and your projects in some of this information, because you all are the inspiration for that. Before we leave, I wanted to do a little exercise in Mentimeter. Is everyone familiar with Mentimeter? Oh, there's also the RFP timeline. Sorry, that's kind of important. Proposals aren't due till March 25th. So we hope it gives you a little bit of time. We'll be having a community RFP workshop February 15th. We'll get information out to all of those who registered with the final times. We're shooting for late afternoon. We have we're gonna have a review panel, and that's not just made up of commissioners. There'll be others, community partners as part of it as well that are not applying for funds. We have a special commission meeting to approve the funding, and then budget approval, and there should be a distribution of funds by July 1st. So hopefully that will meet everyone's needs. So now I hit you with the surprise. But we would like to get some feedback from you today. Not an evaluation of this programming, but really a conversation on what do you feel inspired to do differently to support Marin's children and families? And if you look at your agenda, there's a QR code that you can just get into. And I don't know if they have the instruction page up. Can you flick back? Because there's also a way. Oh no, if, just on the slides. Is that slide 1? Or you can join at menti.com. It's MENTICOM. And oh, the QR code? The QR code works. If you could write some thoughts here about what you feel inspired to do differently to support Marin's children and families. I see. Oof. Link arms and resources with others to do better by our children. Beautiful. Strengthen partnerships. Creating more partnerships to align the work. We don't need, I lost that part, okay. There we go. We don't need to be redundant, thank you. Watching other parents not have a voice and wanting to advocate for them. Not allow the loss of excellent things currently in place. Very thoughtful. Encourage more adults to smoke. I got that. Dave is going to talk to you after this. Love the concept of fiscal visioning that leads to systems change. Join the Marin County Child Care Commission. Yes. Listen and lift up voices for community design systems. Thank you so much. There is one last little thing, one last little piece of this puzzle. Please let us know if your organization is considering applying for funding. Well, there's one resounding yes. Wow. I hope I'm not scaring reviewers off right now. I'm a little bit worried. Wow. Well, I'm going to have my work cut out for me, and I'm excited. Wow. Well, with that, I think we have a lot of work to do, a lot of work ahead. For all of those who lifted up partnership, fiscal mapping, working together, I just urge you to connect after this. Call somebody you don't usually call. Invite them to tables that they're usually not invited to. Push yourselves, because that's what we're going to need to do if we're going to solve this, if we're going to work and be able to meet the needs of children and families in Marin. Thank you so much for your time. Michelle.
Will you invite people who serve children to take the centerpieces?
Okay. And I also, this woman never wants to leave the stage, but she made all of this possible. Every little thing. Nope. Nope. Take it in, take it in, take it in. Thank you. Thank you.
Centerpieces.
Yes.
Okay.
My name's Peggy Dodge. I have worn a lot of hats in this field for 40 years, mostly in Marin. I want to thank First Five for giving me a quick opportunity to give you a call to action. The many hats that I wear, the one I'm going to wear right this minute is one of the newest board members for the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center. it's my first teaching in Marin was there, so it's kind of a full circle thing. But I'm going to invite you for some cooperative play. If you remember what Gianna laid out about the stages of play, we need some cooperative play in this county to help save a place, the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center, that is an illustration of so much of what was just brought up in the panel this morning about excellence and what's good for the children. It was founded actually with inspiration from the settlement house movement in the 1800s to make one place where people could come and access education and childcare and health and other resources. And it continues after 50 years at the moment to do that work. There's a threat. It is a place where diverse children and families live in community. Families have the agency to impact the program, but we're on the verge of losing it because of systems and grown-ups who can't play together on behalf of children and families. And so I want to echo what Jonathan said earlier around a call to action. Each person in this room has a voice and a different set of assets and places that you regularly work and have your voice heard. So I would like to invite all of you to join us in the effort of saving what is a 50-year-old legacy center that serves over 100 families, over 100 children, 75 to 100 families of children birthed through 5th grade, all in subsidized care. So if that goes away, all of that goes away as well. So please, if you have an interest in helping and joining this call to action, it's urgent. It's urgent. We have 30 days and then maybe 30 to 60 more. So we really need some action now. So visit the fsacc.org website for ways that you can get involved. I'm so inspired and I so agree with all of the things we heard this morning. And I just kept getting sadder and sadder and sadder because I felt like an elephant in a room. So I want to thank First Five for letting me speak from my heart about this, and also for telling me to stop shaking and settle down. If I'm sad and mad at the same time, it's not pretty. So thank you again.
And one last, thank you. One last announcement. The preschool bus is outside. If you want to go tour it, if you haven't had a chance, if you need a little place to decompress, that's a great. You may find me there meditating, I think, after all of this. So thank you so much. Feel free to hang around. And Michelle is going to kill me if you don't take the centerpieces. So
please leave them or take them to a place that serves children rather than just your own child. It would be great if they end up at a preschool or child care center. Thank you. Thanks for coming.